The story begins in a quiet mountain village, lit only by the full moon. Inside, a sweaty young man tries to meditate and focus while holding a book. His name is Manhwa, and he used to be just an ordinary scholar without much talent. Everything changed when his parents abandoned him as a child and never reached out again. With no one to support him, he dedicated his entire life to studying to pass the examinations. The young man even sold the family house and took out loans from a local landlord. But after 3 years of trying, he ended up failing and saw his world fall apart. Just as he was about to give up on everything, he found some village children trapped on a cliff. While trying to understand how they ended up down there, something caught his attention. A burst of energy hit him head on and caught him completely by surprise. A mysterious woman appeared, saying he had potential, and took him away by force. The shock was so great that he ended up losing consciousness right afterward. Upon waking up, he realized he had been taken to the famous Kaoshan sect. Now on the path of immortality, he decides to get strong so he never has to bow his head again. After 4 months, he reached the first level of condensation and ceased to be a servant. While he was reminiscing about all this, a chubby friend opens his bedroom door. That was the official date. Manhwa was promoted to an outer sect disciple. A veteran instructs him to get an artifact at the pavilion and head to his new residence. The man also advises him to memorize the condensation scroll to survive. Manhwa thanks him for the advice with a bow and says goodbye to the elder. The sect manual teaches that every cultivator needs a protector to live without fear. As he walks up the mountain stairs, he is a bit confused by what he read. Soon, he arrives in front of a huge and imposing pavilion isolated at the top. A voice announces his promotion and says he must go inside to choose his artifact. At that exact moment, a small storage bag comes floating right into his hands. Not knowing what it is, he hears a voice mocking his complete ignorance. The entity explains how to use the item and finally allows him to enter the building. Determined, the young man walks firmly toward the light to claim his prize. The inside of the place is filled with shelves containing all kinds of bright treasures. He is completely amazed by the glimmer and hopes to find something truly useful. But amid so much luxury, an old copper mirror left on a table catches his eye. The item has no magical aura and even has some rust marks on its frame. Driven by curiosity, the protagonist decides to gently touch the surface of the mirror. Just then, a blonde young man jumps down from the upper floor in a flashy way, praising his vision. Manhwa is terrified by the sudden appearance, and the veteran's excited shouting. The guy lands, saying that choosing that mirror requires a lot of luck and destiny. With a smile on his face, he claims that the newcomer will reach the heavens with that artifact. As Manhwa hesitates, the blonde guy shoves the mirror into his hand and says treasures stay hidden. He says the object was forged by a mysterious light that fell straight from the sky. The patriarch himself never revealed its secrets, but believed in its immense power. Suspicious, the newcomer thinks the item must be junk, if not even the founder could decipher it. The veteran argues that this only proves how divine the treasure is, and that it is waiting for its owner to convince him. He even promises to accept the mirror back if the newcomer doesn't like it. Manhwa notices the trap and knows the blonde guy would surely make up an excuse in the future. But before he can refuse, a hand reaches out quickly toward him. The veteran simply kicks the boy out of the pavilion without any warning. Manhwa goes rolling violently down the stone stairs along with the copper artifact. From inside, the blonde guy yells that exchanging an item on the first day breaks sect rules. The boy stays on the ground clutching the mirror while hearing that he can come back another time. Night falls over the mountain while the new disciple deals with his strange acquisition. Back in his new room, Manhwa excitedly wears the green robe of the outer sect. He admires the luxurious environment and fully accepts his own path of cultivation, but his moment of peace is interrupted by a desperate scream coming from outside. Startled, the young man approaches the window to try to understand what is happening. Outside, 2 disciples fight to the end in the middle of the night over mere resources. Manhwa covers his mouth in shock as he sees the boy being brutally dealt with. He then remembers the warning the veteran gave about the true face of the sect. The rules of the place are ruthless and totally encourage fights between students. That hellish place is infamous for allowing constant theft of pills and stones. The veteran made it clear that there is even a public area for settling scores out there. The newcomer breaks into a cold sweat as he realizes the tales about righteous immortals were just lies. He scratches his head in sighs, knowing he shouldn't expect much from kidnappers. Soon, his gaze falls upon the useless copper mirror left on the table. The boy realizes that choosing a powerless item saved him from being a target for predators. He picks up the artifact and decides his only way out is to become stronger than the others. The next day, students mock him from afar for carrying that broken mirror. Everyone agrees that the junk he carries is simply not worth the effort of a robbery. Manhwa walks calmly through the courtyard, relieved not to attract the attention of criminals. The problem is that his cultivation has stalled, and he needs more energy to advance. Concludes that stealing from newcomers is a cycle designed to create ruthless monsters. Suddenly, a hurried crowd runs toward the central square to get pills. Upon hearing about the distribution, the boy fills with hope and decides to follow them. There in the square, the students are ecstatic to see a martial uncle and some elite veterans. Everyone gossips anxiously in the crowd, imagining that a very special reward will be given. Manhwa observes the leaders from high up and recognizes the same woman who took him by force. He hears colleagues saying the special prize comes with a 12-hour usage seal. The elderly man demands silence and warns that this is not a prize, but an incentive for chaos. Uncle Shangwen summons a green aura, promising 1 pill and half a stone to each student. He launches a large beam of energy that distributes the resources quickly throughout the crowd. Like magic, the rewards fall perfectly into the disciples' hands. Manhwa is fascinated by his share and swears to protect those treasures at any cost. After the general delivery, the man reveals a coveted golden pill glowing intensely. The disciples go wild and wonder how many will perish fighting over that, but the old man warns that the treasure will be given as encouragement to the newly promoted student. The small golden sphere tears through the skies, lies like a shooting star, leaving a trail of smoke. The prize falls straight into Manghwa's hands, and he panics. Aware he is the new target, the boy looks up and sees a multitude of hungry and cruel eyes focused on him. The students surround the freshman immediately, making all kinds of threats to steal the pill. Manhwa feels the overwhelming pressure of the group, shouting aggressively from all sides. Meanwhile, on the mountain peak, one of the elders observes that the game has gone too far. He sighs, stating that giving that item to a newcomer is basically a death sentence. But the other elder replies coldly that cultivation has never been fair and everyone must fight. Since the founder prohibited changes to the format, they decide to just watch the boy's fate. Back in the square, Manhwa raises his empty hand, desperate to stop that massacre. In a grand tone, he gives a speech on how grateful he feels for being guided to that sect. The silver-haired veteran blinks, confused, as she realizes the boy mentioned her name. In a master move, the boy extends the pill toward her as gratitude for having saved his life. The other students are frustrated for not having thought of such a clever political solution. Flattered, the woman asks the leader for permission to accept the gift from her newest junior. With the uncle's blessing, she extends her hand to collect the coveted reward from the clever boy. The pill flies smoothly from the boy's hand, straight into the possession of the silver-haired veteran. Satisfied with the gift, she decides to lend him her own spiritual cave on the south peak. Manhwa smiles, relieved to realize the word cleansed, keeps the other students' greed at bay. The two elders watch everything from above and laugh, impressed by the cunning of the young newcomer. Later, the boy arrives at the entrance of a huge stone door, isolated on the mountain. He holds a green jade token, knowing that item acts as the key to the place. Upon touching the small stone against the door's surface, an intense glow illuminates the area. With that, the heavy doors open slowly, releasing a dense smoke of spiritual energy. The newcomer is amazed by the richness of the environment and feels he has found a divine location. He even finds a spring will be perfect to accelerate his initial cultivation. Aware that this place is worth much more than the pill, he decides to train all night long. At dawn, he wakes up euphoric because a single night there yielded the equivalent of 2 months. But since the location's energy dried up after the training, he realizes he needs to wait for the spring to fill. Taking advantage of the free time, he gets out of bed and decides to check on his chubby friend. His plan is to train in isolation at the spring until he is strong enough to swap the copper mirror. While walking distractedly through the forest, the boy hears a suspicious rustling in the bushes. Excited by the chance to catch prey, he tucks the mirror into his clothes and prepares to pounce. Without thinking twice, the protagonist leaps aggressively right into the dense foliage. The friend he is looking for is a wealthy young man named Li Fugui, who was also taken by force to this place. They were both kidnapped together by the veteran and ended up working as servants in the sect. The chubby boy used to cry in corners because he should have been inheriting his mansion and concubines. Despite the complaints, the loyal boy chopped wood so Manhwa would have time to study, but the boy hid the bizarre secret of suffering from sleepwalking and biting things at night. The newcomer even remembers seeing his friend rip a piece off a wooden table with his teeth. Back in the forest, the protagonist spies carefully, trying to focus on his small, stealthy prey. He celebrates with shouts upon managing to catch a terrified wild pheasant by the neck. But suddenly, the copper mirror tucked inside his clothes starts to vibrate intensely. To the boy's total despair, the bird's backside simply explodes in a fountain of blood. He stands there with wide eyes in shock, not understanding if the creature burst on its own. Feeling his clothes getting hot, he takes the mysterious mirror out of his pocket and starts to get suspicious. The boy stands in silence in the middle of the trees while processing what just happened. To test his bizarre theory, he throws himself again with everything into the bushes to hunt. Soon he finds a small rabbit sitting peacefully in the grass and approaches with caution. Manhwa points the glowing mirror straight at the animal, which stares at him completely confused. Immediately, the creature's backside explodes, spreading even more blood across the scene. Fascinated by the gruesome power, he starts testing the artifact by pointing it at foxes and squirrels. The boy develops a maniacal look while discovering the true destructive potential of the item. A true carnage paints the forest red as the mirror annihilates more victims. Admiring the trail of mutilated corpses, he finally accepts that he has found a supreme treasure. Already back in the cave, he counts on his fingers how many beasts were defeated by his explosions. Since snakes and crocodiles didn't suffer damage, he deduces that the magic only works on furry targets. The boy then remembers the dangerous battle he had against a gigantic demonic monkey. The beam of light from the mirror hit the huge beast's head, on and threw it through the air effortlessly, in front of the brutally defeated creature. Manhwa confirmed for good the absurd power of that treasure. Curiously, the rust on the item itself seemed to vanish after causing so many scary explosions. Thanks to the hunt, he also managed to extract a valuable spiritual core from the big monkey. Now in safety, he aligns the magic stones next to the artifact on the cave table. With his hand on his chin, the young man feels that those few resources are a great start for a newcomer. Having to choose between the demonic core and the pill, he is in doubt about what to consume today. Without thinking much, he opts for the sect pill and quickly puts the dark sphere in his mouth. Upon swallowing the pill, he feels the spiritual energy spreading and circling his cultivation. Immediately after, the boy decides to devour the demonic core as well, all at once. His face immediately breaks into a sweat as he feels a completely absurd shock of power. Desperate, the boy runs to sit on the bed and tries to control that chaotic force. After a long hour of intense meditation, he finally manages to stabilize his body. A dense, foul-smelling black smoke begins to leak slowly from every pore in his skin. He realizes that he would have burst if he hadn't struggled to absorb all that energy. The newcomer remembers the books and understands that his body is expelling impurities. With that, the young man concludes, amazed, that he has finally reached the second level of condensation. Manhwa collapses on the bed, completely exhausted but shocked by the core's effectiveness. He regrets that beasts are rare because he would love to use the mirror and the pills to train. Just then, he places the green sphere on the copper mirror and a mystical light starts to glow. The core simply duplicates itself, but the boy notices his half-spiritual stone has vanished. Remembering an old saying about luck, he decides to be very bold with his life. Without hesitating, the boy throws the new, duplicated core straight into his mouth to become even stronger. An explosion of power illuminates his veins, while energy flows violently. Reading the manual, he discovers that now he can finally use the coveted immortal arts. The young man begins to train tirelessly in the powerful magic technique of the fire serpent. In the forest, he fires flames at a demonic bear and causes a large explosion, but the huge beast just roars in anger and charges with sharp fangs to devour him. The boy recoils, startled to see that not even his best magic could bring the creature down. With no other choice, he points his faithful copper mirror straight at the monster's face. The bear's backside explodes instantly, and Manhwa is grateful to have the help of his artifact. He plans to get more stones in the next distribution to duplicate his cores. Satisfied with the hunt, he decides to head home before encountering stronger beasts. 10 days later, students gather in the square again to collect their monthly prizes. Upon receiving his half-stone, the boy realizes that common pills are no longer of any use. The confusion starts early, and veterans are already trying to steal prizes from the Waker sect members. He manages to get away unscathed only, because everyone thinks he is the eldest sister's prodigy. The young man smiles confidently, knowing that in a few months his mirror will turn the whole game in his favor. On the way, he tests the artifact on colleagues and confirms that the magic only affects furry beasts. Suddenly, a sinister figure emerges, lurking in the shadows of the trees in the middle of the forest. The newcomer freezes upon being cornered by the cruel brother Zhao of the third level of condensation. The man demands threateningly that he hand over his stone and pill immediately. Feigning despair, Manhwa begs for more time, and the veteran agrees to give him a reprieve, but the rival warns that he will take the cave for himself and turn him into a mere personal servant. The young man tries to use the veteran's name as a shield, claiming he cannot hand over the place. Irritated by the excuses, the villain advances furiously, saying he already tried to be friendly. Manhwa reacts in the blink of an eye and fires his fire serpent at the attacker. The flaming spell hits the enemy head-on, creating a formidable golden explosion. Zhao recoils, drawing his sword, and reveals himself to be practically unscathed after the surprise impact. The veteran recognizes the technique and attributes all that fast progress to the spiritual cave. With a sadistic smile, he decides to use his fear demonification art to end the fight. A dark and terrifying energy surrounds the rival's body and begins to change his form, knowing he has no chance. The protagonist turns and runs as fast as he can. The monster chases him fiercely through the dark woods, promising to fulfill his wish of meeting his end. A huge claw covered in dark fur advances quickly toward the poor newcomer. The blow hits the boy head on and throws him violently to the ground, shredding his clothes. Manhwa slides across the battlefield and uses his own hands on the soil to manage to break. The monster boasts of its lethal technique, but the young man focuses only on its new, thick fur. Upon noticing the monster's thick fur, Manhwa draws his copper mirror with a smile. He points the artifact confidently straight at the fierce werewolf charging at him. Immediately, a colossal explosion of light and blood erupts from the beast's backside. The gruesome impact is so strong that the creature collapses to its knees in the grass. While Zhao screams in pure agony, the young man marvels at seeing that the mirror worked. With the advantage in hand, the newcomer proposes a truce so each can go their own way. But the humiliated veteran bellows that he will eradicate all the boy's family and ancestors. The threat awakens Manhwa's fury, and he decides to eliminate the rival to protect his parents. Without pity, he focuses his energy on the artifact and aims at the beast one more time. Another devastating explosion hits the monster, which writhes on the ground in absolute suffering. The internal pressure is so great that blood gushes from the burst veins on its face. With wide eyes, the veteran veteran lets out one last roar of pain, tearing his throat. The monster is thrown down the cliff by a final, grotesque explosion of blood. With the end of the deadly battle, the copper artifact falls silently to the dirt floor. Manhwa stands paralyzed, trying to process the brutality of what just happened. Upon facing the mangled corpse of the beast, he realizes he has taken his first life. Days later, in the public zone, the violent fights between disciples continue to be fierce. A boy has his chest torn open by a sword blow during a ruthless duel. The winner laughs sadistically, promising that this will be the anniversary of the rival's end. However, a cheerful voice interrupts them, calling the attention of the two bloodthirsty fighters. Manhwa emerges selling medical items under the improvised banner of Pill Emporium. With a salesman's smile, he offers a healing pill for just one spiritual stone. The injured boy revolts at the abusive price and shouts that he is being robbed in broad daylight. But the merchant convinces him that buying the pill to win and loot the rival pays off. The injured one gives in to the logic and tosses the payment while Manhwa collects the stone. Celebrating, the saving remedy is thrown accurately straight into the hands of the injured disciple. In an instant, the deep cut on the boy's chest closes completely, releasing smoke. The merchant thanks him for his patronage while the customer gets up, healed for the rematch. The other fighter goes berserk upon seeing the sudden disadvantage and goes for the attack. Enraged, Manhwa retreats gracefully while the two rivals cross their sharp blades again. The combat restarts with even greater violence and sweat gushing on the battlefield. This time, it is the warrior who complained about the healer who ends up taking a blow to the stomach. Immediately, the boy appears beside the newly injured one, offering his quality products. Seeing that Manhwa helps any side for money, the previous customer revolts against the mercenary. While the fight restarts, the fake merchant runs with his banner toward the next sale. He finds another pair fighting and offers the cure in exchange for the loot of the opponent himself. One of the guys refuses the offer. The clever one convinces the other to buy the advantage. Further ahead, he blackmails two nearly finished students, selling salvation to the fastest one. The young man walks proudly through the mountain, promoting himself as a fair-priced healer. With his stock empty, he decides to monopolize the healing market to profit abusively. Suddenly, a student tries to ambush him, shouting, enraged, with a heavy sword in hand. But the attacker ends up with his face crushed in the blink of an eye by the young newcomer's strength. Manhwa mocks the rival's stupidity, arguing that he would never sell without defensive power. He suggests that the knocked out guy buy the products next time and loots the other's bag. Back in the safe cave, the boy counts his new treasure of 53 stones. The young man marvels at realizing that profiting from war is much more lucrative and risk-free. Among the spoils, he comes across a valuable beauty pill that preserves youth. Suddenly, the heavy doors of the hideout open, revealing a mysterious shadow. The boy turns his head, completely startled, to see who invaded his isolated retreat. To his total surprise, the imposing elder sister Shu enters, walking through the stone hall. Manhwa quickly bows respectfully and greets his benefactor humbly, but when he lifts his head, the young woman walks past him, as if he were just an invisible ghost. She doesn't even look back as the boy realizes he is nothing more than an unimportant nuisance. In an attempt to approach her, he invites the veteran to rest a little inside his new home. Coldly, she refuses the offer, saying she is about to enter seclusion and just wanted to see how he was doing. He watches the young woman disappear into the darkness while remembering a lesson from the sect manual on his table. The text stated clearly that to not live worried, a person should always have a strong supporter. Without wasting time, Manhwa runs through the forest shouting until he manages to reach his protecting muse. With cupped hands, he offers the rare and very expensive beauty pill as proof of his eternal gratitude. Sister Shu turns, impressed by the attitude, because she knows how difficult it is to get an item like that touched. The girl touches her pill, aware that the young man's flattering words are very sincere. With a serious look, she warns him to focus on cultivation instead of using shortcuts to climb in rank. Feigning repentance, he lowers his head humbly and thanks her for the wise advice of his mistress. For his loyalty, the veteran accepts the gift and hands him a defensive jade amulet in return return, the boy proposes accompanying her to her house, knowing that being seen with her will ensure everyone's respect. The woman stays silent for a few seconds, evaluating the invitation from her helpful and persistent companion. Finally, she accepts, and they walk together along the trail illuminated by the beautiful orange sunset. The peaceful mountain scenery creates an atmosphere of complicity and friendship between the two cultivators. Hidden in the shadows, an elder laughs, satisfied with the cunning of the boy he had been following for some time. The old man realizes a newcomer understood the true essence of the Kaoshan sect better than all the others. A few days later, news of the young man's outing spreads like wildfire, and students gossip about his success. One group discusses the newcomer's meteoric rise, having opened his own business and humbled strong veterans. A boy mocks the others, claiming the real key to Menghao's power is his relationship with Sister Shu. Another contests the claim, saying the veteran is known as an ice queen and would never be friendly, but the gossip guarantees the girl filled him with resources, and that now his path to power will be unstoppable. The group sighs, dying of envy of the boy who supposedly gained the support of the most feared person in the area. In another corner of the mountain, the humiliated and injured veteran bows with great respect before a door. He cries desperately, begging a senior brother for help against the injustice of the pill seller. The corpulent student complains that the newcomer has been extorting students, forcing them to buy useless items. From inside the luxurious building, a voice agrees to evaluate the situation, but tells its crying lackey to leave, and in a display of strength, the brother expels his relative, reminding him that in the sect, there are no family ties. Alone in his room, the great veteran Lu Chai reflects on the genius idea of opening an extortion business. The proud third-level fighter regrets never having thought of such a clean way to steal from the weak. Time passes, and in a clearing, a new and larger pill shop banner is raised majestically by the wind. But the business that was supposed to be lucrative leaves our hero discouraged, and without revenue for some time now. Meng Hao sighs, bored, seeing a potential customer at the top of a rock, but with his own banner. He curses for having had his sales model stolen by a veteran, who would obviously finish him off in a fight. As usual, two apprentices meet in a wild sword duel, bathing the forest in warm blood. One of the young men is brutally cut in the chest and spits a large amount of blood from the violent impact. His opponent is impaled right afterward, proving that the duel is at a critical moment for both sides. Meng Hao emerges, smiling, with his usual offer, promising to keep the winner alive for a modest fee. But to his huge surprise, the copycat veteran appears on the other side and proposes the exact same conditions. And to Meng Hao's complete horror, his customer hands the stone to Lu Chai, who offers a good discount. Throughout the afternoon, the blatant copy continues to completely ruin our hero's once lucrative business. Outraged, he sighs, frustrated to see that he managed to sell only two small items during the entire morning. On the other hand, his competitor delights in a large handful of magic stones gained from the fake emporium. The great Lu Chi boasts of his success, but confesses that the mere existence of Meng Hao is like a splinter in the eye. The next day, the cruel veteran begins to force kneeling students to buy his products at sword point. Meng Hao observes the scene, lying on a rock, upset for not having the courage to rob people so openly. The next morning, the villain intercepts the young man and threatens to finish him if his old banner remains on the battlefield. Meng Hao falls, startled, to the ground while the villain approaches, threatening to cripple his cultivation forever. The next day, our hero decides to act and stands guard at the door of the duel zone for weak disciples. Some boys arrive to battle and speculate if the newcomer intends to provoke the feared number 1 veteran. Suddenly, firm footsteps break the silence and attract all the curious gazes of the place to the dirt trail. Disciples point, shocked to see the great Lu Chai arriving, imposing, to deal with the problem. Meng Hao advances courageously against the rival, using his support hand to propel himself toward victory. The crowd of students freezes in shock and disbelief to see the newcomer dare to challenge the legend of the fight area. The veteran points his legendary sword and decrees that the enemy is digging his own grave by trying to fight. The boys recognize the deadly purple sun sword, which was given to the sect veteran as a great prize. But even in the face of so much danger, the young newcomer just smiles and continues his suicidal charge against Lu. In the air, the powerful purple sun sword emits a blinding glare upon clashing against the opponent's fragile blade. As expected by the public, the great Lu Che's weapon breaks the hero's junk into several pieces in the blink of an eye. Taken by surprise by the violent impact of the master swordsman, the boy spits out a large amount of blood, but even defeated, he smiles, revealing magic flames while telling Lu he is at the 4th level of condensation. He explains proudly that he reached that level in the dead of the previous night, while everyone slept. A quick memory shows him breaking pills and cores with the bronze mirror inside his old cave. The flashback reveals Meng Hao's revolt at seeing the rival copy him, steal his customers, and still threaten his cultivation. Determined to take revenge, he used all his shop reserves to duplicate the simple Kai condensation pills. With a huge handful of those dozens of pills, he swallowed everything at once, creating a new explosion. The boy felt as if he were in the middle of a spiritual tidal wave capable of taking his soul beyond the limits. Now in the present, the newcomer mocks the veteran, asking if he still has the courage to fight someone so strong. The other sect students cannot believe someone rose to the 4th level in just a few months. With his secret revealed, Meng Hao wipes the blood from Lu's face and laughs confidently while pushing away his old sword. But the veteran does not accept the humiliation and throws himself ruthlessly into a low attack, ready to cut the rival. Surprising everyone, Meng Hao pulls out a new shining sword that defends his neck at a last crucial second. The absurd pressure of the impact destroys this weapon as well, with sharp shards flying straight into both students' faces. The veteran takes the chance and shoves the boy with the hilt of his sword, mocking his defective swords. But the hero is not intimidated and sticks his right hand confidently into the old cloth bag hanging from his waist. With an agile movement, he summons more than 6 flying magic swords and orders them to surround the opponent. Meng Hao points his finger at Lu Qi, decreeing that he will bury him in the unlimited copies of his magic swords. The flurry of sword soon pushes the opponent against the rocks in an uninterrupted whirlwind of scary lights and sounds. The iron rain crushes the veteran's defense in dozens of incessant blows that shatter everything around them. The public is terrified to see Lu's legendary weapon simply crack against such common and useless swords. Surrounded by his many other lethal blades, the boy demands the rival stand up and face his blows. Tasting blood, the veteran curses his opponent and decides to activate his own secret trump card for good. Students in a panic flee, desperate, upon feeling a terrible and unknown wave of power dominate the clearing. Lu launches a huge green amulet in the shape of a gourd, while the young man collects his swords to try to fight back. The villain roars, revealing that Meng forced him to use the powerful weapon that requires at least the 4th level of power from the magic gourd. A monstrous spiritual lightning hits the ground, exploding the entire region around the students. The public cries, terrified, while the winds of demonic energy tear almost everything from the public zone. In the middle of the storm, Meng Hao's jailed shields the hero. Although all his flying blades break, a strong glow emanates from the green protection stone, which seems to be about to shatter from so much tension in his hand. He sighs, thanking the silver-haired veteran eternally for having given him such a formidable shield. Lu Qi freezes, completely stunned and terrified to see that his best and most powerful attack failed against the enemy. Worse still, the veteran no longer has the minimum energy required to continue activating his legendary magic gourd. Taking advantage of the moment of total vulnerability, Manhwa flies like a rocket, aiming his boots at the opponent. In the blink of an eye, the hero lands a punch on the rival's face, who loses his balance and falls prostrate on his stomach on the ground. The young man advances immediately upon him with fury, analyzing the fallen relic, and decides to take the valuable jewel as loot. Humiliated, the veteran warns that small treasure possesses his master's seal, who will come to punish him brutally. The two debate under the gaze of the sect, while Lu claims that the rules protect them from endings in the area of the weak. The young man points his finger, stating he will destroy the enemy's cultivation as revenge. Totally terrified, the rival retreats, stumbling, begging for mercy. Later, silence reigns at the entrance to Manhwa's safe stone cave. Inside, he reflects that he would fight the same way, even knowing who supported the rival. The boy concludes that the conflict was completely unavoidable to avoid being finished off. The problem is that without magic stones, he cannot duplicate the powerful amulet. With no way to hide the relic, he tries to decide to whom he will hand over the artifact. The newcomer naively thinks about returning the gourd to the kind senior brother Wang. Just then, a lackey of Wang yells at the door, demanding the boy come out on his knees. Irritated by the visit, Manhwa asks from inside for the man to get straight to the point. The messenger smiles with mockery and decides to transmit his master's order from right there. In an arrogant tone, he states that the newcomer's life will be spared thanks to his youth, but he demands he return the gourd and cut off his own arm and leg as punishment. The boy goes into shock, questioning if Wang's orders override the place's rules. The envoy claims the orders are absolute and orders the newcomer to kneel in the square. Without receiving answers, the man turns his back and warns he is leaving. Night advances silently over the mountain, lit by the crescent moon. In the room, the young man panics, not knowing how to escape that terrible sentence. His first instinct for survival is simply to flee from there as fast as possible. But he walks to the heavy door, hesitating if flight would really be the only way out. Upon touching the stone, he realizes that abandoning the sect would turn him into a criminal. The next day, the boy leaves his cave with a gloomy and determined expression. Leaning against a tree, the lackey mocks him, praising his intelligence for not having fled. Manhwa replies coldly that he would never accept being marked as a traitor to the sect. Satisfied, the man guides him along the path, advising him to beg for forgiveness from the master. The newcomer clenches his fists and glares at the ground, boiling with hatred for the absurd injustice. The two climb the endless stone stairs toward the top of the great mountain. In the main courtyard, Senior Wang Tengfei exudes kindness, distributing advice. The students sigh admired, while a disciple returns some borrowed pills. The kind leader refuses the payment and tells the student to focus on his own cultivation. The serene gaze of the arrogant man, Su turns to the arrival of the small newcomer. With a gentle smile on his face, he extends his hand, demanding his item back. Manhwa approaches slowly and stops before the great absolute genius of the sect. In an act of courage, he recites that by the sect rules, the spoils belong to the winner. The lackey laughs, mocking the boy's immense stupidity in citing laws there. Senior Wang smiles, warning that the gourd only belongs to whoever he decides to give it to. With a simple movement of his finger, the master fires a brutal invisible attack. A monstrous gust of wind crushes the young man's body and pushes him violently. Desperate, Manhwa activates his valuable green jade shield at that exact moment. The senior makes a face and lets out a sigh of boredom in the face of that pathetic defense. Without the slightest effort, he tilts his fingers subtly to increase the pressure. Immediately, the attack crushes the barrier and shatters the protective jade in the air. The overwhelming force throws the boy down the slope in a glare of intense energy. The boy falls defenseless with his arms raised in the middle of the shower of shining shards. He widens his eyes to see the precious gift from his protector being destroyed. With one more elegant wave of his hand, the arrogant master pulls his relic back. The young man is swallowed by a terrible cutting whirlwind and spits out quite a bit of blood. the winds rip the small magic gourd straight from the neck of the injured boy. Wong grabs the amulet and asks ironically if the newcomer heard his orders. Without waiting for an answer, he launches a new sharp wind blade against the enemy. The ruthless wind attack wraps around Manhwa's legs, threatening to break his bones. The newcomer rises, desperate, while the cutting blades of air swallow him whole. With a superior posture, the master calmly orders the boy to be expelled from the sect. Suddenly, a thundering explosion with the breaking cymbal shatters the magic wind. Manhwa collapses heavily on the stone floor, spitting blood from the strong impact. The great elder Ayung emerges, imposing, at the boy's back. Demanding the end of that fight, the arrogant master decides to retreat, smiling politely so as not to disrespect his superior. Without caring about the damage, the genius turns his back and simply abandons the location. Left on the cold ground, the young newcomer faces the sky, completely devastated by his weakness. The other disciples observe the tragic scene, maintaining absolute and startled silence. The elder throws one last severe look at the fallen boy before following his way. With his body trembling from pain, the boy forces his injured arms to try to get up. Humiliated before the entire sect, he walks with his head down through the crowd. The young man descends the immense stairs of the mountain, feeling the weight of his terrible defeat. Upon arriving at his cave, he pushes the stone door using his last remaining strength. Completely exhausted, he stumbles into his dark and isolated refuge. His injured body finally gives in, and he collapses unconscious on the entrance floor. A long and silent time drags on while the boy remains passed out on the floor. 10 whole days pass in the darkness without him managing to wake from his sleep. Finally, elder sister Shu appears in the cave and finds her fallen prodigy. She stares at him with compassion, revealing that she also just came out of a long retreat. Using a healing water magic, she says that the feared Wong possesses powerful origins. The woman explains that the rival, the leader's great favorite to dominate the inner sect. The gentle aura of the veteran lifts the boy from the floor, settling him gently onto the bed. She leaves a jade item on the table, asking him to break it if he suffers another attack. Manhwa wakes up in pain and asks how long it takes to reach the 7th level of power. The girl replies that it takes decades and advises him to focus only on his own training. Once again alone in the dark room, the boy stares at the ceiling, reflecting on his fate. An external voice warns him that his old friend was also promoted to external disciple. The newcomer remains motionless with opaque eyes, still digesting the trauma he suffered. Determined to change, he finally gathers courage and rests his tired feet on the floor. Manhwa approaches the table and decides to read the old sect rule manual one more time. The book insists that every cultivator needs a strong protector to live in total peace. With a fierce expression, the boy bites his own finger until he tastes his blood. He rests his bleeding finger firmly on the open old pages of the book. Furious, he writes over the text, swearing that he will be his own true support. Time passes, and the mountain landscape transforms with the dry leaves of autumn. The young man ties his hair into a ponytail, marking the beginning of a new phase. With clean clothes and a confident posture, he descends the stone steps toward the courtyard. Down below, his old chubby friend waves in an animated eye. Catching way at him, the boy says goodbye cheerfully to the old colleagues, who tremble with fear, crying with relief. Manhwa observes the strange scene, completely confused by the group's desperate reaction. The chubby boy walks happily, boasting of his popularity and thinking his colleagues were shy. Arriving at a huge pavilion, the friend shouts, animated, to show his great treasure. Manhwa is disappointed to see that the special prize is just a very short sword, but the chubby one smiles, displaying his sharp teeth, saying the weapon is hard to bite. The hero remembers the dark nights and concludes that the boy has a talent for magic teeth. Manhwa offers to share his rich cave, but the chubby one refuses, valuing his privacy. The newcomer says goodbye, smiling, relieved not to need to hide his copper mirror. Later, the protagonist sits calmly to meditate in front of the fight zone. The protagonist hands his business to the chubby one, but advises him not to risk too much with businesses closed. Manhwa starts to meditate quietly on a rock in the the autumn, the harsh winter soon arrives, and the young man continues cultivating focused amid the dense snow. His chubby friend emerges animated, pulling him by the hand to introduce him to a visitor. The newcomer recognizes Xiao Hu, who greets him respectfully, revealing that now he is also a student, as the four were kidnapped together. Menghao asks about the friend who walked with him. With a sad look, the boy reveals that their old companion has, unfortunately, met his end. He says a wind blew him off the cliff, and the animals dealt with his body down there. The chubby one cries and begs the visitor to stay with them, ensuring the protagonist's protection. But surprising everyone, the young man refuses the offer coldly and warns that he will follow his own path. The visitor moves away alone in the middle of the snow, leaving the two friends behind on the mountain. The chubby one scratches his head, completely failing to understand the boy's solitary and strange attitude. Menghao deduces that he must have found some secret treasure to have so much confidence. 3 months pass, marking an entire year since the boy was dragged to the sect. On distribution day, students gossip, worried that the great elder passed away from old age. The crowd fears an enemy invasion while rumors about the lost ancestor run wild. The boy asks if the deceased was named Aoyang and is relieved to hear it was someone else. Upon being questioned by his friend, the young man admits that his cultivation stalled and becomes a laughing stock. He remembers Sister Shu's advice and concludes that he needs special pills to advance. The rich chubby one offers to buy remedies for him. When old Shangguan emerges for the delivery, the elder displays proudly a small golden pill glowing intensely in his hand. Menghao widens his eyes immediately upon recognizing the powerful aura of that reward. The coveted item is none other than a rare and valuable arid spirit pill. The disciples go into ecstasy, remembering that special treasure is only handed out once a year. The protagonist clenches his teeth, knowing that the pill would be perfect to break his limit. With a tired expression, the old leader demands that everyone remain absolutely silent in the courtyard. He observes the greedy crowd and says he has been in charge of distribution for 2 long years. The elder gives a vague speech, stating that he always had a great soft spot for new students. The hero listens to everything attentively while the old man lies, saying new talents will save the sect. On the other side, the chubby young man bites his dagger, anxious for the award result. Without much patience, the old man gives up on the speech and throws the prize in a precise beam of light. The pill hits the hands of the poor chubby one head on, who goes into shock from the unexpected impact. Terrified by the target on his back, Menghao's friend curses his own luck. He begs for salvation, knowing that holding that item is literally a death sentence. Without wasting time, the veterans advance with a thirst for blood, and Menghao tries to push the crowd away. More and more greedy students join the confusion, pushing each other for the treasure. In a quick and intelligent movement, the newcomer snatches the golden pill straight from his friend's hand. He throws the boy to the ground to protect him and orders him to run to the safety of his cave. The attackers notice the exchange and mock him, thinking the 4th-level newcomer will be easy prey. Without hesitating, the young hero turns his back and flees in a dash, descending the huge stairs. To feign innocence, the chubby one points to his friend and yells that he was robbed. The maddened crowd chases the target down the stairs, demanding he hand over the reward. The chubby one covers his mouth with his hands, trembling with despair and rooting for the protagonist's escape. Running through the forest, the boy plans to survive for 12 hours to consume the pill. Since strong veterans follow him closely, he decides to risk his life by entering the Black Mountain. The newcomer smiles, pulling out his mirror, aware that the beasts of the place will be his great advantage. The rivals stop at the mountain border, thinking the boy went crazy to enter there so weak. They conclude that the lethal monsters would swallow the target and the pill in the blink of an eye. Desperate not to lose the treasure, the veterans invade the dangerous, shadowy forest. But right on the way, they come across, startled, the immense carcass of an exploded tiger. The veterans are shocked to see that the strong monster had its valuable core stolen. Soon they find more carcasses and wonder how the newcomer killed them so quickly. The blonde rival breaks into a cold sweat upon realizing he would never have managed to stop such a strong opponent. 2/5 level leaders think the boy is very strange and decide to focus right on the hunt. One of the hunters focuses his gaze full of greed, wanting to recover the pill before everyone else. With that, the two powerful cultivators advance at extreme speed through the shadowy woods. Meanwhile, the hero runs, holding his faithful copper mirror, ready for any beast. He points the strange artifact at three boars that flee, terrified. At that very moment, the young man concludes that just scaring the beasts avoids major delays and helps him in his escape. Suddenly, he does an agile somersault in the air, sticking flying swords straight into the ground. Then, the bold boy lands softly on the blade of one more flying magic weapon. Using the great momentum, he slides quickly through the terrain, riding on top of the sharp steel. When the weapon loses speed, he steps firmly on the ground to break his advance. He soon repeats the process and surfs on another sword, opening a large distance from the veterans. The rivals are shocked, thinking he is flying, but notice it is just a sliding trick. The agile newcomer doesn't lose his rhythm and keeps jumping perfectly along the swords without stopping. The villains think the trick is very stupid for wasting energy and decide to wait for him to get tired. But the clever one devours his numerous pills, while running to manage to keep up the maneuver. With a lot of hatred in his look, he focuses on becoming stronger so he is never humiliated by Wong again. Suddenly, an enemy jumps from the trees, shooting flames and demanding the valuable magic pill. The man makes a threat to finish him, but the hero reacts by firing a sharp blade at him. A huge fire serpent crosses the path, forcing the hero to dodge the scalding attack. In a beautiful spinning movement, he throws dozens of flying swords around the grove. The rivals widen their eyes, incredulous at the absurd wealth in weapons of such a newcomer target. With a dark smile, the young protagonist shouts the explosion command at the top of his lungs. A deafening detonation swallows the path in flames, injuring the hunters who are following him. The leaders covet the boy's bag, irritated by him destroying such expensive treasures in one blow. Half an hour drags on, and one more devastating explosion shakes the immense mountain forest. 1 hour later, another fireball lights up the skies and attracts even more enemies to the hunt. The bangs keep echoing without stopping, proving that the newcomer does not intend to give up so soon. The panting leaders are very indignant at the target, who already exploded more than 30 swords. They follow, furious, trying to understand where all that energy comes from and notice something bizarre. Suddenly, a gigantic demonic wolf jumps from the shadows, attacking one of the leaders head on. The man punches the monster, complaining that the beasts are ignoring the boy to focus on them. Surrounded by a thirsty pack, the rivals decide to bring down the beasts to clear the path. Far away, the young man celebrates the success of his mirror, but knows the pill's glow will attract him. Upon seeing the huge amount of boars, he fears that not even the artifact will stop a tide of monsters. At that exact moment, a scary roar shakes every immense tree in the Black Mountain. The astute boy freezes at that very moment, suspecting that that scream belongs to a king of beasts. Through the treetops, dark monkeys with vivid eyes emerge, hunting anything around. In a very quick decision, the boy hides his glowing mirror straight into his clothes. One of the feared dark monkeys focuses its attention, wanting to devour the newcomer's pill. The brutes fall violently from the woods, trying to crush the young cultivator without mercy. The newcomer notices that the beasts do not flee from him and deduces they are aberrations that are much stronger. But a clever smile illuminates his sweaty face upon architecting a brilliant escape plan. In another part of the dense woods, the blonde hunter continues his bloody battle against beasts. Exhausted and surrounded, the hunter admits he cannot cross the location and thinks about retreating from the hunt. But the relief vanishes as soon as Manhwa emerges, sliding and attracts the large, irritated monkeys. The clever one shouts, pretending he brought the monkey order at the request of the other students. Without letting the hunters react, the newcomer throws more swords for a new fatal explosion. Manhwa detonates his flying swords in the monkey's face and leaves the hunters enraged. Behind, the hero flees, smiling for having delayed most of the rivals, but knows the swords cost a lot of money. Soon he hears the shouts of 2/5 level leaders who finally manage to bring down the wolves. Aware that he would lose in a direct combat, he decides to enter even deeper into the dangerous Black Mountain. Night falls silently over the location, lighting up the dark sky with a beautiful and solitary full moon. Suddenly, scary roars of various beasts echo violently throughout the dense forest. The thundering sound dominates the environment completely, creating a climate of pure dread in the darkness of the woods. The hunters face the crazed animals and conclude that the fugitive newcomer is to blame for all that chaos. They suspect the target masters, some evil art capable of controlling the emotions of all those creatures. The hunter with tied hair suggests retreating, but his irritated colleague refuses to let go of the rare golden pill. Meanwhile, in the depths of the woods, the trees sway under the night cloak of the wild region. Manhwa widens his eyes, completely shocked and sweating cold, upon being faced with something scary. An immense and horrifying demonic snake rests silently in the middle of those enormous rocks. The boy freezes in fear before the colossal size of the creature that sleeps curled up on the great mountain of stone. Upon analyzing the beast with heavy breathing better, he notices that the giant monster seems to suffer from a lot of pain. The animal's shell breaks little by little, and the protagonist deduces that the snake is shedding its skin. Suddenly, the terrible scaly monster lifts its head and fires a deafening roar toward the skies. The roar destabilizes the boy's energy, and he discovers the true origin of all the panic of the other beasts. He remembers that snakes become very weak in this phase and calculates that a creature of that size would take years in the process. With his body unable to withstand the immense sound pressure of the environment, the young man ends up spitting blood, injured internally. The lethal impact makes the newcomer conclude that the monster must be almost at the supreme limit of power condensation. Aware of the absurd danger, he decides to retreat, but something peculiar attracts his total attention quickly. A gigantic flying sword rests, stuck firmly into the thick and hard scales of the enormous snake. Fascinated, he thinks that a weapon capable of piercing a beast of such a high level must be a great lost treasure. However, the boy slaps his own face to drive away the greed and decides not to provoke the terrible sleeping animal. Trembling with fear, our fearful and intelligent hero flees in a hurry from that monstrous nest of certain end. Many hours later, the boy finally manages to sit on a distant rock to rest his legs. The two veterans emerge, completely exhausted, questioning if the runaway's vital energy has finally reached its end. With a very calm countenance, he swallows a vigor pill, restoring his strength in the blink of an eye. The pursuers break into a cold sweat, completely frustrated, without having any pill to recover their own tired breath. The big guy loses patience entirely and curses the young man, demanding a fair fight without the use of beast control. The protagonist opens his arms and threatens to run to more beast nests if they insist on continuing the hunt. He shows the golden pill, warning that he will consume it to become stronger if the 12-hour time reaches its end. The bold threat of the newcomer further infuriates the veteran, who grinds his teeth, dying of anger at the audacity. Without having another choice, one of the hunters turns his back, promising to take revenge brutally. When they return to the sect, the other man praises the boy's cunning, trying to create a fake friendship before retreating peacefully from the location. The fake, friendly one lowers his head, curving his hands, hiding his immense hatred behind that courteous greeting. The newcomer observes in absolute silence, the figures of the two rivals disappearing little by little through the dense, dark forest. Relieved, the young man collapses on the rock, complaining that he would spend all his reserves if that escape lasted any longer. Half an hour passes and the restrictive tracking seal that glowed every hour finally expires under the radiant sun. With eyes overflowing with pure joy, the boy celebrates, admiring his valuable and shining golden prize. He summons his greatest and most reliable weapon, asking for the bronze mirror to perform its much-loved miracle. The bold healer bets all the magic stones from his business on the table to try to duplicate the powerful remedy. After glowing intensely, the relic consumes the funds, creating 10 glorious, identical pills on the flat rock. Taken by an unshakable determination, the hero declares that he will finally break his limits to become unbeatable. Meanwhile, at the top of the mountain, a mysterious man with long hair murmurs, satisfied with his long wait, Senior Wong reveals himself, exuding the shadow of a legendary dragon. Knowing the beast perished within that region, the dangerous veteran analyzes his token, aiming to use the great sect's secrets to evolve his own base. A servant approaches, warning that the invited allies are already ready to start the great and mysterious real plan. Wong reveals that he will attack the fragile immense snake to extract its rarest core. When the skin's shedding ends, the proud Wong Tengfei smiles confidently, claiming that his plan will be a success because he is the chosen one. He recalls that at 6 years old, a drop of magic blood fell from the sky straight onto his arm, forming a mark. This drop gave him an inheritance to find the legendary Yinglong and dragon hidden in the mountain's shadows. The monster's corpse was sealed, and the truth could only be revealed during the difficult skin shedding. Aware of his imposing fate, the master orders his subordinates to invade the mountain at dawn. Far away, the valuable golden pills float, glowing in a dazzling way in the darkness of the night. The newcomer absorbs the valuable items and feels his soul dive into a vast ocean of spiritual energy. Upon analyzing his interior, the young man comes across, impressed, an immense floating magic lake in the sky. He realizes the sea is his own energy core and celebrates having reached the 5th level of power. The crystalline lake confirms the first great milestone in the hero's journey toward absolute immortality. This spiritual foundation proves, once and for all, that the boy abandoned his mortal body completely. The boy vibrates upon knowing that now he will be able to train the art of walking in the wind and raising his lethal blows. But his lasting joy is suddenly interrupted by a scary roar echoing through the forest. The hero notes a lot of fear in the big monster's roar and decides to investigate the situation from a safe distance. Upon spying on the location, he is shocked to see cultivators flying and attacking the gigantic scaly snake. The newcomer hides in the rocks upon recognizing the imposing figure of Senior Wong leading the furious hunt. With a calculating and serene look, the sect's cruel genius prepares a powerful shining magic in his fingers. Immediately, large swords cross the skies at an impressive speed, tearing the dense clouds. The magic blades hit the robust body of the sleeping beast, causing a great, fulminant impact. The other summoned masters take advantage of the gap and jump violently with their own lethal weapons. The hero freezes upon realizing that all the cruel helpers are at least at the 7th level of condensation. The colossal demonic creature writhes in pure agony while receiving hundreds of relentless attacks. Hidden, the young man roots, animated, for the big monster to swallow the arrogant master and conclude its revenge. Observing the beast's fury, the experienced master lifts his hand, ordering the creation of a barrier. An immense spiritual matrix lights up instantly in the dark skies, dominating that entire region. Destructive lightning falls from the sacred formation straight onto the thick skin of the gigantic cornered animal. The beast fires a deafening roar of pain, feeling the rays burn its old, rustic scales. In an explosion of pure energy, a formidable blue dragon spirit emerges from the snake's head. The leader smiles, satisfied upon noting the legend was real and the creature hid the remains of the divine beast. Having exhausted its final defensive strength, the great shining mirage collapses and fades in the dead of the night. The great hunters go into high alert upon noting that the ancestral ghost has dissipated for good. The arrogant lord does not contain his immense greed, warning that the supreme treasure is almost in their hands. The newcomer is shocked to see the gigantic snake taking flight through the skies in one last desperate effort. But the boy's astute gaze soon notices that the colossal sword stuck in it did not rise along with the monster. He understands that the old rusted blade remains stuck in the abandoned shell and deduces that that is worth gold. Full of determination, the young man swears he will steal that treasure just to frustrate his enemy's plans. Without wasting one more single second, our fast hero runs as fast as his new feet allow. He jumps quickly along the dangerous rocks, using the wind to his favor so as not to be detected by the rivals. Desperate to arrive first, he squeezes through the dark fissures, cutting the mountain path. The agile boy slides silently through the stone cracks, approaching the targeted ground more and more. war. His heart beats very fast in his chest, fearing the veterans will return to seek the great prize. Upon finally reaching the kill site, he is paralyzed, completely amazed by the immensity of the discovery. High up, the men hold the advance of the enraged beast, while freeing the senior to steal the treasures. Without hesitating, the elegant lord dives gracefully toward the abandoned lair in the depths of the earth. He lands softly at the stone entrance, opening his confident path toward the spoils of victory. The rival smiles in a completely evil way, celebrating the end of his long searches for that dark power. The skeletal corpse of the ancient dragon lies silent and shrunken in the middle of that immense snake carcass. The villain approaches slowly, explaining that he needed to wait for the skin's shedding to steal the relic in peace. He boasts of having spent his wealth and many years of research to track down the dragon's perfect tome, but the leader gasps, sweating cold, upon touching the monster and noticing the great prize vanished from the location. Wang Tengfei searches for the treasure in every corner, but realizes the relic disappeared. Desperate, he uses his mystic blood mark to try to track the item's location. The Lord widens his eyes, completely shocked and furious upon feeling absolutely nothing. Dominated by rage, the villain hits the dead dragon's skull with a brutal sword blow. He notices a recent cut on the thick shell and concludes that someone stole his supreme prize. Without wasting time, the great genius flies furiously out of the cave in search of the thief. Floating over the forest, he yells, demanding to know who dared steal his valuable core. With a demonic expression, the master bellows at the top of his lungs, tearing the silence of the night. Far away, the young hero displays a greedy smile, knowing he ruined the arrogant rival. Upon hearing the enemy's shouts of fury, the clever one accelerates his pace, so as not to be caught. The boy finally arrives safe in his cave and collapses, exhausted on the cold stone floor. Calmer, he decides to check his spoils and pulls out a beautiful storage bag. The newcomer remembers having looted that item from the corpse of a great veteran cultivator. Very curious and anxious, our hero opens the small magic bag to check his wealth. From inside, he pulls out a small spiritual stone, complaining that his energy is very weak. But the young man is shocked to see that the bag holds more than 2,000 such stones. He also finds some common clothes left behind, but decides to ignore the useless pieces. Next, he pulls out the big demonic snake core, dreaming of duplicating the jewel. However, his magic mirror heats up absurdly, and the boy drops the artifact in a beautiful scare. Fallen on the table, the relic fires a bizarre beam of light straight at the valuable core. The jewel reacts, glowing intensely on the table, while small cracks appear around it. Rays of spiritual energy fire violently in all directions of the old cave. Meng Hall goes into a panic and tries to grab the mirror to stop that magic confusion. Upon collecting the core, he notices the shell cracked, revealing a strong reddish glow. The boy peels the jewel carefully and reveals a red treasure exuding immense power. He is totally amazed by the dense and pure energy that fills his entire room. Satisfied, the hero finally focuses his attention on the last spoil of that great hunt. He wields the heavy wooden sword, noting that the rustic blade is terribly sharp. Suddenly, the ancestral weapon starts to suck all the spiritual energy from the nearby spring. Curious about the phenomenon, he brings a small magic stone closer to test the weapon's hunger. In the blink of an eye, the sword sucks all the essence from the stone, leaving the boy speechless. The newcomer concludes, animated, that the weapon would drain the spiritual power of any injured enemy. Aware of the danger, he faces his mirror, begging the artifact not to explode the sword. Breathing deeply, he aligns the two great treasures on the floor to initiate the duplication. The young man wonders how many magic stones would be necessary to copy a divine item. With hands a little shaky, he rests the glass of the artifact straight on the wooden hilt. Immediately, the mirror sucks a large handful of stones in a violent explosion of light. The boy widens his eyes in pure despair to see his wealth disappear without leaving a trace. He tries to keep calm, hoping the duplication was already underway on the table. To test the process, he throws with hesitation one more small stone onto the mirror's surface. The relic devours the stone, and the boy begins to feed the item, cursing its hunger. The number passes 100, and the healer surfs with hatred, seeing his savings go down the drain. Crying with sadness, he begs the mirror for mercy while passing 200 stones. The boy hesitates to stop, fearing that failure will destroy the treasure's functions forever. Suddenly, a colossal column of light and fire erupts from the floor, clearing the entire cave. Manhwa is left in the corner, grumbling that he is too exhausted to be surprised. The young man observes the bright bonfire, wondering when that intense glare will vanish. Sometime later, the flames vanish and the boy faces the result with his mouth wide open. The miracle happens, revealing two perfectly identical wooden swords on the floor. Crying and laughing, nervous, he collapses on the floor, regretting having lost 2,000 stones. Manhwa cries bitterly upon realizing he toasted his 2,000 valuable magic stones. Trying to relieve the pain of the loss, the young man holds firmly his new shining core in his hands. He wonders how strong he will become upon swallowing that right after reaching the 5th level. Without thinking twice, the bold cultivator throws the small red sphere straight into his mouth. The rare demonic core's energy falls deeply like a drop in his spiritual sea. For a brief and tense moment, the surface of the mystic water remains completely still, but suddenly, a monstrous explosion of energy makes the great internal lake overflow. Violent waves of pure spiritual power clash aggressively against the boy's mind. The tidal wave sweeps everything along the way, spreading a chaotic force throughout the hero's body. Shirtless, the young man meditates, isolated, on his stone bed, trying to master all that force. Manhwa grips a massive stone blade with his injured arms and screams his rival Wang Tengfei's name in a fit of rage. He hurls the giant weapon with all his might toward his rival, who just watches him calmly. But Wang Tengfei raises his hand and blocks the massive attack easily by creating a glowing shield. The disciples whisper, saying that a nobody like Manhwa could never compare to a prodigy. Suddenly, the immense stone weapon begins to shatter, revealing hundreds of smaller blades hidden inside. The attack spreads out, raining sharp blades down against the opponent's barrier. All the swords converge rapidly on the same point, creating immense pressure in the air. Senior Wang is startled to realize that something completely unexpected is about to happen. A terrifying explosion of red light erupts on the battlefield, blinding everyone for a moment. When the smoke clears, the powerful heir sees that one of his fingers has been badly injured and is bleeding heavily. He stares at his own wound, unable to believe he was struck by a common warrior. Manhwa warns him that he has destroyed the finger that insulted him in the past, and that they are now finally even. The crowd is in complete shock to see the sect's prodigy injured in such a humiliating way. Overcome by hatred, the young master shouts, accusing his rival of having stolen his valuable inherited treasure. He loses his temper upon realizing that a divine weapon capable of dominating the world has ended up in Manhwa's hands. The boy acts oblivious, while his opponent swears he would recognize that sword anywhere. Furious, he summons two beasts of pure spiritual energy, determined to recover the item at any cost. But Manhwa just swings his wooden weapon and destroys the elemental attack with one agile strike. The effort causes the hero to cough up blood, and the villain mocks him, saying he cannot handle the weapon's power. Manhwa fires back, saying that his rival only wants to rob him, and asks if that sword is truly the only one in the world. With an ironic smile, he pulls out a second shiny item and asks if that one belongs to his enemy too. To everyone's astonishment, the youth positions himself holding two identical magic swords. His rival's eyes widen in total shock. Unable to understand what he is seeing before him, the nobleman begins to stutter in desperation, repeating that it is impossible for two of those legendary weapons to exist. Manhwa walks slowly, taunting his rival and asking which of the two is the supposed unique relic. He charges forward, revealing that the two blades are actually a sacred pair that belongs only to him. Suddenly, the ground explodes, and the hero realizes his opponent is ascending to the skies to escape the strike. Without hesitation, the boy also leaps high into the air, initiating a frantic aerial confrontation before the audience. Spectators comment in surprise that both are flying even without having reached the foundation stage. The villain draws a mystical amulet and warns that he will use its powerful destructive energy to end the fight. The nobleman activates the item, ordering foretelling his opponent's downfall, while the young warrior just dares him to try. High above, the final clash between the two powers begins to unfold before the sect's watchful eyes. An immense wave of golden energy explodes in the sky, illuminating everything with devastating, violent force. Meanwhile, a sphere of red light shines intensely at the bottom of the spiritual lake inside Manhwa's body. The mysterious black dragon spirit emerges from the shadows, emanating an ancient and overwhelming energy. Sharp gusts of wind swirl furiously in the air, tearing through the sky with the impact of the terrifying clash. A dense cloud of smoke spreads slowly, covering the entire combat scene after the loud boom. A violent beam of light strikes the ground with force, completely destroying the stone arena below them. The proud hare falls, defeated and motionless, in the middle of the debris of the battle he just lost. The disciples panic upon realizing the humble youth has won, and now wants to take his rival's life. With an implacable look, the boy dives down, holding his sharp blade to deliver the final blow. The elders scream in desperation, begging him to stop and not commit such a terrible act. But a powerful man appears in the last second, saving the defeated youth and stopping Manhwa's advance. The man in blue robes looks sternly at the victorious youth and warns him that he has gone far enough. Everyone present immediately bows in deep respect to greet the sect's supreme leader. Leader Yahello declares the hero's victory and officially names him the new disciple of the sect. While recalling the difficult trials he went through, Manhwa remains firm and imposing before everyone. The youth performs a formal greeting, showing that his respect and determination remain unshakable. The boy smiles lightly, aware that he alone is responsible for his own destiny and power. The supreme leader's words echo through the arena, marking the true beginning of a new era for the hero. A chubby friend cheers happily, while an elder feels relieved that he no longer needs to protect the youth. The old master turns away, thoughtful, recalling the harsh rules required to enter the inner sect. Students comment in shock about Manhwa's monstrous talent for having defeated the heir of a great clan. Far away, a dark and gloomy mountain known as the Black Mountain rises beneath storm clouds. A mysterious cosmic creature gives a bizarre smile, mocking that sect's vulgar name and millennial history. The mysterious being watches Manhwa from afar, finding it interesting that he swallowed the core and received the inheritance. Violent lightning strikes across the dark skies, while the entity promises that sooner or later it will tear down paradise itself, even with its main body asleep. The powerful being finds it very amusing to watch the world with its divine sense. 1 week later, Manhwa is taken to pay his respects before a huge painting of the ancient patriarch Kashan. He kneels with reverence, following the strict ceremonial rules required for new official members. The youth thanks Senior Chen Fan for the friendly welcome, says as he considered him to be a very serious person in the past. Chen Fan laughs awkwardly, thanking him for the compliment and promising to take him personally to see his new spiritual cave. Manhwa concludes with relief that the senior is an honest cultivator and very different from the cruel people of the outer sect. Walking through the forest, Chen Fan advises the boy to read in the libraries. He does not depend only on his magic weapons. He also scolds the newcomer, explaining that hunting common animals delays the advancement of his mystical energy. Sitting at the table, the senior continues chatting, saying that using many storage bads is quite impractical. Manhwa covers his face with his hands, wondering if the other senior lives in isolation, just to avoid that chatterbox. The chatterbox asks if he misses Senior Shu, leaving the boy completely flushed and stuttering nervously. To change the subject and hide his embarrassment, the youth asks what happens after completing the condensation level. The senior begins another long lecture, explaining in detail the different levels of the spiritual foundation stage. The two spend hours talking about the sect's legends and the almost unreachable realms of mystical immortality. The youth's eyes widen, fascinated at the real possibility of one day becoming a true immortal. Chen Fan confirms it and advises the newcomer to travel outside that small country to expand his horizons. He says the true world of cultivators lies in the southern domain, where the chosen ones fight atop bones in mountains. The boy asks if the senior is talking about his own dreams, and if he desires so much to know that distant place. The man stands up, laughing softly, and admits he got carried away talking about his greatest desires. He reveals with a serious look that his greatest dream is to achieve the same glory that Patriarch Kashan had in the past. The senior gives a smile so ambitious that it makes the boy break into a cold sweat, thinking he looks like the story's great villain. The youth stares at him in silence for a brief moment before deciding to share a little about himself. He reveals his humble origin as a student and thanks the senior for being the first to truly talk to him there. The chatterbox gets excited to keep lecturing, and the poor boy begs him to drink water and train instead of talking. Night finally falls over the sacred territory, covering the mountains with the strong silver glow of the full moon. In the defeated opponent's room, a valuable green jade lies completely broken and shattered on the stone floor. Wang Tengfei rests, injured on the floor of his residence, still unable to accept the terrible defeat that almost cost his life. He bites his lip in pure hatred, remembering the humble rival stealing his legendary inheritance and promising future. The man laughs insanely, lamenting that he wasted years hiding in that sect to end up with nothing. Suddenly, a powerful wave of mystical ice explodes inside the room, destroying the doors with violence. He raises his head, frightened, and stares at his residence entrance, demanding to know who dared to invade the place. An imposing man accompanied by a young woman appears, explaining that a small failure before insects means nothing. The veteran warns that his real rivals are in other clans and asks if he is still proud to carry the Wang surname. Feeling the heavy weight of his family's expectations, the black-haired youth trembles and hesitates for a moment before answering. With bandaged hands full of determination, he slowly rises from the cold floor, gathering his pride. He shouts his own name at the top of his lungs, releasing a strong aura of spiritual power throughout the dark room. The young master stares at the veteran, screaming with all his strength that his surname is indeed Wang. Satisfied, the man says he is the clan's prodigy, and that in a few years he will reach the legendary foundation stage. He guarantees that Manhwa will return to being just a mere insect when the nobleman reaches higher levels of cultivation. Thinking of his hated opponent's face, Wang Tengfei swears that his cruel revenge will be implacable and final. Back at the sect at night, the disciples point in surprise at the sky, noticing the approach of something mysterious. A gigantic and imposing flying ship emerges, sliding smoothly through the clouds under the mysterious moonlight. Meng Hao stares at the immense magic vessel in the sky, whispering, intrigued, the name of his great rival's powerful clan. On the flying ship, the clan veteran grumbles that he should never have allowed the young heir to go to that isolated place. Wang Tengfei murmurs Mengha's name with hatred while the older man activates a mystical power through his gaze. Far away, Menghao suddenly feels a terrible chill down his spine and realizes he is being attacked by an invisible force. The mystical attack is so devastating that it makes the boy cough up a lot of blood at once, falling to his knees. The disciples run, worried, to help him, while the youth fears the enemy clan is already seeking quick revenge. The sect leader flies through the skies, facing the ship, and recognizes the powerful rival elder behind that cowardly hidden attack. The invader waves, finning politeness, and warns that he is only picking up the injured heir so they can return to their clan. In the blink of an eye, the immense magic vessel disappears into the skies without leaving any trace in the dead of night. Meng Hao swears to himself that he will train tirelessly to become strong and survive the dangers of the cultivation world. He spends the next 2 weeks recovering in his new residence, receiving care from a young sect servant. During his rest, he takes the opportunity to study ancient maps and understand the borders of the small country and the entire continent. Shortly after, the youth receives his first inner disciple salary, containing a valuable, bright green, colored gem. Chen Fan explains that medium, grade spiritual stone is extremely rare and equivalent to 100 common low-level stones. The senior reports that a single high-grade gem is worth 10,000 common gems, and that they do not even exist in that poor region. Meng Hao almost dies of regret upon deducing that he wasted 2,000 rare and invaluable stones just to duplicate his sword. Sometime later, he is assigned an important mission to distribute sacred pills to the outer sect audience. With mastery, the youth guides the glowing spheres, making the valuable items float smoothly to the eager disciples. The students collect the magic pills, grateful and amazed by such generosity coming from the new prodigy. Before everyone, he gives a speech, encouraging the newcomers to focus on training so that, in the future, they too can reach the inner sect. Upon ending the event and descending the stairs, the boy is followed closely by his old friend, who runs after him happily. Two disciples from the past approach him humbly, offering beautiful gift bags to make amends for old fights. The two boys say goodbye, bowing in respect, as the friends continue their quiet walk under the sunlight. The boy asks if it was the chubby one who planned everything, and the friend admits proudly that he suggested the bribes to the former rivals. To reward the help, Manhwa offers Wang Tengfei's former cave, so the chubby friend can train in a good place. The chubby one celebrates excitedly, planning to show off to the sect's girls while the hero insists he just train. Firm steps march through the green grass toward the main temple to answer an important official call. They talk about the mystical pill trade, which continues to yield many profits under the good friend's administration. The firm steps continue to climb the stone slopes, approaching the grand structure of the sanctuary more and more. On the way, Manhwa makes deals to ensure the chubby one also receives quality treasures for his safety. Just ahead, the gentle breeze stirs the long, light hair of a beautiful and well-known female figure waiting for the boy. Manhwa focuses his curious gaze on the young senior, feeling enormous tranquility upon meeting her again after so long. Under the orange glow of the sunset, the boy makes an elegant bow to greet Senior Shu respectfully. She congratulates him on his promotion, revealing she has just come out of her training retreat to celebrate his great victory. With a slight smile, the youth says he won the combat, even before needing to use her powerful amulet. He extends his hand, offering a beautiful and bright beauty pill that he managed to trade for honestly to give her as a gift. Surprised by the affectionate gesture, the young woman stares at the jewel for a few seconds before picking it up with her delicate fingertips. She turns away, saying she feels a little tired from her long meditation and gently refuses the boy's company. The youth remains standing at the edge of the path, watching in silence as the beautiful girl walks away under the golden colors of the sunset. The senior's graceful steps continue to tread the dirt path, gradually disappearing among the old trees. Without looking back, she murmurs that she already knew the first beauty pill he gave her had not been obtained at the shop. Manhwa remains motionless in the same spot, watching the beautiful senior's silhouette to disappear completely into the dense forest. He scratches his neck awkwardly for having his little secret revealed, but displays a warm, satisfied smile at the good moment. Later, he isolates himself in his stone room, meditating intensely, surrounded by streams of pure green spiritual energy. Suddenly, a glowing message in green flames appears on the rock, catching his attention in the middle of his deep training. The ribbon of light orders explicitly for the three main inner disciples to appear without delay at the Great Hall. Rising majestically among the stone cliffs, the sect's great temple shines under the gentle light of the day. The trio of young warriors crosses the main wooden portal, walking together with serene and attentive expressions. Before an immense stone statue of the ancient patriarch, the leader orders the three to pay their proper respects. While bowing, the hero notices that the sect's founder had hard features and seemed much more like a warrior than an immortal. The leader begins his solemn speech, revealing that he will tell the whole truth about the past and the lost glory of the ancient clan. The leader says that the sect's ancient glory came from a legendary spiritual scripture famous throughout the southern domain. Hearing the mystical master's words, Chen Fan and Manhwa exchange confused looks, trying to understand the nature of the treasure. He reports that the divine scripture has 7 tomes, and that each one allows one to reach the maximum strength of a certain realm. The master reveals that the Wang clan infiltrated their heir, precisely with the mission to steal the condensation tome. Upon hearing that the secret serves to obtain the perfect mystical foundation, Manhwa gets excited, realizing he has a golden chance. Unfortunately, the leader warns that the scripture is not written on paper and resides only in the mind of the sleeping patriarch. 3 disciples are completely stunned to discover that the sect's legendary founder is actually still alive. He details that the elder entered seclusion 400 years ago to try to transcend and left clear orders before going. Each century, the founder sent from his spiritual retreat 10 pendants condensed from his own vital blood. The best disciples use those jade pendants to tune their own energy with the patriarch's divine mind. If they were destined, the young cultivators would have the rare opportunity to inherit a part of his vast knowledge. The master concludes with a shining look, saying this is the only method to extract the teachings of the mystical scripture. Chen Fan raises his hand, intrigued, asking if no student managed to succeed throughout 4 centuries of attempts. The master laments that the patriarch's soul has weakened due to a recent accident, and that now only 3 pendants remain. The boy swallows hard, realizing that his great rival must hate him eternally for having stolen his coveted spot in the test. The master channels his power, releasing 3 shining beams directly toward the 3 young people selected in the room. Manhwa skillfully grabs his jade pendant, which glows intensely with a very fiery red color. The master warns that the group's success will depend solely on each of their destinies. Within the depths of the temple, suddenly, the colossal stone statue of the patriarch opens its eyes, releasing a powerful and blinding white flash. Beneath the youth's feet, a whirlpool of blue energy emerges, creating a spinning dimensional portal right on the floor. The wise leader points solemnly at the vortex, ordering them to enter at once to seek their fortunes. Without wasting time, the 3 jump in unison into the portal, diving toward the unknown underground lair. The beam of light transporting them closes rapidly, leaving only silence to reign in the great golden hall. Alone in the room, the master wonders which of the 3 youths will inherit the great power, or if all will fail again. He reflects, tired, on the enormous pressure from other sects and the weakness of his own clan over the years. The man dreams of training a good successor to finally be able to retire in peace in the distant mountains. Meanwhile, Manhwa awakens in a dark environment and looks around, confused, trying to get his bearings in the new location. The youth finds himself before an ancient and gloomy palace that seems to have been abandoned for centuries in the depths of the earth. Chen Fan explains to Senior Shu that mystical area is the true forbidden underground palace of the sect. Manhwa observes, curious, the thick mist that seems to erase all colors of the environment, leaving everything gray. The senior holds the boy's hand firmly and warns him not to touch the mist, as it is a dangerous magic restriction. They agree that each must use their jade pendant to find their own paths of enlightenment. Senior Chen Fan is the first to channel his own spiritual energy, making his pendant glow green. He wishes good luck to his companions before leaving rapidly toward his point of mystical meditation. The beautiful Senior Shu points in the other direction and recommends affectionately that the youth be very careful there. Manhwa just nods positively and watches her walk silently until she disappears among the palace mists. Alone, he holds the red artifact, focusing his spiritual energy on the stone to begin his search. Suddenly, a frightening roar echoes in the darkness, leaving the young hero completely paralyzed with fear. A gigantic and monstrous gray creature emerges from the shadows, advancing menacingly against the boy. He turns, frightened, sweating cold, upon realizing that the lethal danger is much closer than he imagined. The ancestral ghost roars furiously, displaying white and shining eyes while trying to grab the intruder. The giant creature advances with sharp claws, determined to tear apart the invader, who just prepares for the worst. But when Manhwa raises his glowing red pendant, the millennial beast stops the attack and trembles in astonishment, completely terrified by the power of the artifact. The smoke giant turns around and flees in a rush. The boy is intrigued to note the monster's terror and questions whether that being was ever a real human. His eyes widen upon seeing dozens of other powerful ghosts wandering in silence through that region. The youth understands that those creatures are ancient puppets that serve as the sanctuary's defense system. Suddenly, he comes across a colossal mountain made entirely of spiritual stones and loses his breath. His eyes shine with greed, but he decides to retreat, knowing his own life is worth much more than gold. demonstrating enormous self-control. He turns his back on the wealth and follows the guiding glow of his mystical amulet. Manhwa walks cautiously through the outer area of the underground temple, guided by the signal of his mystical amulet. He stops, surprised, to see a mysterious rock that glows colorfully in the middle of all that gray mist. The youth concludes that that area without mist must be one of the 3 rare points destined for spiritual enlightenment. He knows that time is short and that the chance of success is low, but decides to try to meditate on the sacred rock. The boy motivates himself, thinking that overcoming Senior Wang and stealing this unique inheritance will be his greatest and best achievement. With eyes full of determination, he pulls out his magic mirror, ready to use it to ensure the test's success. The youth begins to feed the mirror with his magic stones to try to duplicate the valuable red jade pendant. The lad loses his mind in desperation upon seeing that even wasting almost his entire fortune, the greedy artifact still refuses to make the copy. He falls to his knees on the floor, completely anguished and not knowing what to do to save his precious investment. In the middle of the panic, he remembers he still keeps in his bag the giant high-grade gems he found on Black Mountain. Breathing deeply, the youth decides to bet everything and throws one of his largest and rarest spiritual stones into the mirror. Immediately, a colossal explosion of light erupts before him, making the lad let out a loud shout of pure fright. The miracle happens. The boy is left speechless to see that a single giant gem yielded 15 perfect copies of the jade. He stares at his belongings, calculating the absurd loss he had in the past when spending 2,000 gems like that for nothing. The hero laments in silence for his old stupidity, begging that his new swords are truly worth every penny, but he soon brushes off the regret, focusing all his attention on the divine scripture he is about to try to obtain. Holding a burning red pendant firmly, he declares that the true test can finally begin. Manhwa sits in the lotus position on the mystical rock while his first amulet burns slowly. An enormous and glowing bubble of reddish energy expands around him, enveloping the boy's body in meditation. Under the influence of the power, he hears distant whispers and feels his consciousness dive into a deep mystical dream. Surrounded by thousands of floating golden scriptures, the lad loses track of time, focused only on the teaching. Sometime later, the bubble of light dissipates completely, and the first jade pendant disintegrates into ashes. He opens his eyes, sighing in frustration upon realizing he only heard nonsense noises, failing in his first attempt. Without letting himself be shaken by the failure, the young master draws the second burning stone, ready to try again. Far away, the beautiful senior Shu King meditates, concentrated on her own point of light, wrapped in a gentle protective aura. But she opens her eyes, disappointed, upon verifying her failure and questioning if she really has no connection with the patriarch. She hopes that Chen Fan has better luck and manages to get the scripture to guide and rebuild the sect with his righteousness. A subtle smile appears on her face upon thinking that seeing the young Meng, how conquering the prize would also be wonderful. Upon returning, she finds Chen Fan, and the two soon admit to each other that they failed in their difficult spiritual search. Determined, the two sit side by side to wait for Meng Hao's return, hoping he has had better luck. But in the hidden depths of the palace, the burning of the pendants generated an invisible energy that flowed straight into the earth. The mysterious beam of red energy travels through the ground and slowly approaches the sleeping body of the ancient patriarch. The ribbon of vital light penetrates the elder's wrinkled skin, bringing a sudden gust of energy to his weak body. Upon receiving the mystical power, the elderly man's dry hand begins to tremble, demonstrating the first signs of life after centuries. Patriarch Kaoshan awakens, subtly from his deep trance upon recognizing the familiar essence of his own blood. He murmurs, weakened, remembering that energy belongs to the sacred jades he himself created in the past. Shortly after, two more streams of red energy invade his chest, strengthening his spirit even further. He partially opens one of his eyes, understanding that the sect sent new disciples to perform the sacred test. The elderly man laments that only 3 blood pendants talents would never be enough to save him from his imminent death, but he is startled upon feeling the burning of a fourth amulet, begging in desperation for the young intruder to approach quickly. With his gaze fixed on the darkness, the old man cries mentally for help, knowing that is his last hope. Back on the surface, the two seniors continue patiently waiting without understanding the young friend's delay. They debate whether they should look for him, but decide to wait a little longer to avoid getting lost in the dangerous darkness. In the cave, Manhwa continues sweating cold, concentrating to the maximum while he consumes one jade pendant after another. Several red amulets burn rapidly on the floor as the youth insists stubbornly in his deep trance. The enormous mental pressure makes the boy hold his head, feeling a terrible exhaustion dominate his entire tired body. He goes so far as to burn almost 30 copies of the artifact, knowing he needs to go until the end to reach his enlightenment. Suddenly, a colossal golden letter shines before his eyes, floating in the middle of all that pure energy. The hero's mind is filled by the grandiose and legendary sacred revelation, consecrating his absolute success in the test. Down below, Patriarch Kaoshan fully opens his eyes, feeling the torrent of vital energy restore his strength. The old patriarch is left open, mouthed upon realizing that 35 identical blood pendants appeared out of nowhere. He widens his red eyes, unable to conceive how such an absurd miracle could be happening. Grateful for having his life saved by the blood pills, the elder decides to investigate who is the mysterious savior. The powerful master uses his sense to watch the three disciples performing the meditation test in the palace. His gaze focuses directly on Manhwa's bubble, realizing that the humble boy is responsible for all of that. 3 days pass, and the two seniors decide to get up and go after the lad, fearing that something bad has occurred. Suddenly, Chen Fan spots the youth walking slowly across the bridge and warns, relieved that his companion has returned. Manhwa feigns exhaustion, lying that he failed and ended up just sleeping because of a terrible and strong headache. Chen Fan says he had the same bad result, but the youth secretly hides an enormous triumph under his sleeve. While they walk, a colossal and divine wave of golden energy explodes in the water, brightening the entire secret palace. Internally, the force of the scripture carves its power into Manhwa's mind in an explosion of spiritual energy. The sect leader awaits, anxious to see if the divine inheritance will finally manifest through his disciples. Manhwa celebrates, knowing he now possesses the perfect mystical technique to reach the legendary top of his cultivation. Thoughtful, the boy decides to keep his triumph a secret to avoid them discovering his magic mirror. Underground, the patriot curses his own past decision to have left the mystical scripture visible outside. He questions, intrigued, how the boy managed to master the entire scripture using only 50 blood pendants. The elder complains, saying the test should have consumed hundreds of jades to fully restore his vitality. The old master walks uneasily, lamenting his proud choices of the past that left him trapped in that pit. An evil idea rises in his mind, and he plans to attract all the cultivators of the country to his secret tome. He imagines the banquet of vital energy he will have by sucking the souls of the intruders to finally free himself and fly. The old man watches the trio of youths through his energy mirror and realizes they are already preparing to leave. With his last strength, he strikes the ground with his hand, releasing a terrible mystical earthquake through the structures. The palace begins to tremble violently, frightening the group of youths who try to maintain their balance on the cracked floor. Suddenly, an immense and heavy stone slab covered in golden scriptures collapses from the ceiling right in front of the three. Chen Fan recognizes with astonishment that the slab has the legendary condensation tome of Kaoshan scripture engraved on it. Manhwa analyzes cautiously the symbols engraved on the stone, realizing there is something very wrong with that inheritance. He notes that only the first 2 lines are true and that the rest of the text has been altered as a trap. The young woman suggests taking the immense stone outside so the leader can decide what to do, and Manhwa agrees, feigning innocence. Underground, the patriarch laughs, victorious, knowing that the removal of that stone will cause a flash visible throughout the continent. But suddenly, Chen Fan extends his hand firmly, ordering them not to touch the stone, frustrating the elderly villain. He warns that taking the slab would bring ruin to the sect and suggests copying only the data onto smaller jade pendants. that the trio begins to copy the magic texts under the gaze of pure hatred and frustration of the cornered old patriarch. The elder loses his temper, cursing the honest senior as a wretch, and praises Menghao secretly for keeping his mouth shut about the farce. He grinds his teeth, aware that if the stone is not taken, he will never be able to attract his energy prey. Chen Fan warns that the copy has been successfully completed and calls the blue portal to return to the main hall. The disciples approach the mystical portal, ready to cross the dimensional gap back to safety. Desperate, the elder tries to come up with an emergency plan to prevent the three from fleeing before he manages to suck their souls. But the youths take the final step and enter the glowing whirlpool together, disappearing completely from the underground palace. The old man extends his claw in pure agony, yelling that he cannot waste that one and rare chance of salvation. The mystical portal closes for good under the earth, leaving the gloomy, forbidden palace in deep and tense silence. Extreme exhaustion and frustration make the elder cough up an immense and violent torrent of black blood in the cave. In the main hall, Master Hiloa smiles, relieved to see his three best warriors returning safe. But suddenly, a bizarre ribbon of living blood shoots out from inside the portal before it closes completely. Without noticing the danger, Chen Fan begins to give his report while the mysterious trail of blood snakes through the air. The beam of blood crosses the hall at high speed, flying directly outside through the open doors under the moonlight. The group gets frightened upon seeing the red ribbon fleeing through the sky and wonders if they committed some grave error during the test. Without wasting a second, everyone runs rapidly to the stone balcony to track the destination of that anomaly. Upon looking up, they are met with an immense golden pillar of energy, cutting through the clouds with sacred runes. In another part of the continent, rival sect masters point, frightened, to the skies, observing the great flash. The veterans tremble in terror upon concluding that a legendary and forgotten miracle is about to emerge again in the country. The elders of another important rival sect look surprised at the horizon upon noticing the flash of the ancient scripture. An experienced master orders his warriors to march immediately toward the Kaoshan sect to seek the relic. The entire Kaoshan sect region is bathed by that monumental yellow light, which attracts the eager gazes of the continent. Grand Elder Iong focuses his worried gaze on the chubby friend, realizing that their situation has become too complicated. A bright green summoning portal emerges on the ground, announcing the immediate arrival of new and powerful combatants. Elder Iong activates his protective magic and disappears into a green beam of light to try to intervene in the external confusion. The leader asks what they activated, and Chen Fan explains that he only copied the characters from an old stone slab. Upon examining the copied stone, the leader concludes, seriously, that both the scriptures and the flash in the skies are false. Menghao feigns surprise upon noting that the experienced master also managed to see through that trap easily. He warns that other sects will come for the patriarch and orders the three disciples to wait in safety inside the temple. Suddenly, a colossal column of energy strikes the sanctuary's central courtyard with a frightening boom. Dozens of shining trails cross the country's forests and rivers, flying rapidly toward Kaoshan's lair. The allied forces of the rival sects advance in a pack, determined to take the grand ancestral treasure at any cost. An enormous and bright greenish barrier is activated in a hurry, covering the entire imposing main temple of the clan. The courageous Master Hiloa flies to the top of the cliff to face the horde of invading cultivators head-on. Several colored stars of spiritual energy shine in the skies, revealing the presence of powerful enemy leaders. The 6 sovereign elders of the rival sects float in a pack, emanating an overwhelming and intimidating aura in the air. The old man with red hair shouts, furious, ordering the defenders of the Kaoshan sect to surrender at once. Hiluawa faces them firmly from behind the wind's shield, trying to maintain order in the middle of that grave invasion. In the courtyard, the novice warriors tremble with pure terror upon recognizing the fearsome elders of the core formation stage. The heroic leader Hiluoa roars against the excessive arrogance of the invading pack, releasing his own vital energy. The boom of his shout causes a violent shockwave in the skies, making the entire mountain structure shake. An elderly master with a long beard demands an immediate explanation about the golden flash that emanated from Kaoshan's lands. The leader says he also does not know the origin of that, but the invaders refuse the excuse, willing to appeal to force. They demand he Luho deactivate the protective shield, threatening to annihilate and sweep the sect from the map if disobeyed. With a cold look, he Luhoa repeats the enemy general's grave threat, maintaining a totally fearless posture. Below, the defenseless disciples observe the confrontation tense, knowing their lives depend solely on that duel. Shu Kyung runs to support those wounded who suffered grave internal damage due to the terrible clash of energies in the air. The chubby friend thanks Meng Hao for saving him, and the boy warns, worried that they can only trust their leader now. Overcome by sudden irony, he Lua covers his face with his hand and begins to laugh completely insanely. Chen Fan is appalled by the enemy's strength, while Elder Aoyang teaches that power is the only real law of this world. He Luhoa shouts that he swore to protect the clanked from foreign oppression, but layman's not having the strength to save everyone there. In a fit of rage, the heroic warrior bellows at the top of his lungs that he is resigning from his post as supreme sect leader. Senior Chen Fan stares at Grand Elder Aoyang, frightened by the extreme decision made by his master at that moment. A colossal blade of energy collapses onto the cliff, causing a terrible boom and breaking the great wind shield. He Luowa and the Grand Elder float majestically through the skies, surrounded by an immense and shining curtain of characters. Grand Elder Aoyang laments the inevitability of that tragedy and ends, stated everything that was within their reach. In an imposing tone, he formally orders all disciples to disperse, announcing the official end of the Caution sect. The disciples are in complete shock and despair upon hearing that their beloved clan has simply ceased to exist. He Luoa warns the invaders that he will detonate the base if any youth is injured, willing to perish along with the enemies. Meng Hao understands his leader's noble attitude and reflects that individual strength is the only path to real freedom. Satisfied with the dissolution, the enemy sovereigns accept the terms and swear they will not harm the disciples without a clan. An old invader analyzes the environment, concluding that the mystical relic is certainly hidden in the heart of the mountain. Feeling a little more relieved, he Luoa makes a solemn nod and begins to deactivate the area's last defense spells. The wind shield dissipates for good, leaving the entire beautiful architecture of the sanctuary unprotected and exposed to dangers. The disciples watch the scene in silence with desolate looks, not knowing what to do now that they are abandoned in the world. The grand sanctuary of Kaoshan now rests defenseless under the clear sky, marking the end of a glorious era for all of them. With a look of deep melancholy, the former leader He Luoa calls his companion to withdraw permanently from there. Suddenly, a colossal and frightening shout echoes through the skies, ordering furiously that no one dares to leave that location. He Luoa widens his eyes, frightened by the strength of that terrible, mysterious voice, and turns, demanding to know who is there. A beautiful and imposing woman wearing purple clothes appears, floating in the middle of a strong divine light, surrounded by silhouettes. He Luoa freezes completely in a cold sweat upon recognizing the powerful Green Luo sect coming from the southern domain. The former invaders also panic, knowing that the arrival of that great clan will bring many problems for everyone. She decrees coldly that no one will be able to leave the location while a cosmic spatial rift opens right next to her. A strong and intimidating man wearing a gold shoulder pad crosses the spatial portal with a very confident smile. The purple woman recognizes him as the protector Jia Zhao Shanling of the powerful Golden Cold sect, mocking his nose for treasures. The strong warrior retorts, saying that his clan has as much right to claim the relic as the rival ladies. The two sovereign groups stare at each other from afar, dividing the mountaintop in a true climate of imminent war. Suddenly, a colossal torrent of wind cuts the air, announcing the arrival of one more formidable adversary. An elegant cultivator with long hair appears, floating upright on top of an immense and sharp black flying sword. He Luoa identifies him, surprised, as Zhou Yanyan, a renowned warrior belonging to the legendary One Sword clan. He reports, frightened, that is the #1 sect of the Southern Domain, and that their power is capable of shaking the heavens themselves. Manhwa recalls Chen Fan's warnings about the Southern Domain, realizing that that vast world is much bigger than he imagined. Far from the tumult outside, Chen Fan runs desperately back to the inner rooms of the great abandoned palace. He kneels in a hurry at the base of the Colostone statue of Patriarch Kashan to perform one last task. The honest lad warns that he has sealed the secret entrance to protect the founder's body against the invasion of the old monsters. Underground, Patriarch Kashan celebrates happily upon feeling the presence of several strong cultivators on the mountain. The elder savors his freedom, imagining that the pack will invade the pit and break the seal, allowing his triumphal escape. But the old man loses his mind in rage upon seeing through his energy mere Senior Chen Fan sealing the secret entrance for good. The elder tears his hair out in hatred, cursing the honest senior for ruining his liberation plans for the second time. In the courtyard, the invaders use their divine senses but cannot track absolutely anything beneath the sealed ground. The elegant swordsman flies thoughtful, confirming that the mystical energy is not with the youths, but cannot find the hideout. Suddenly, the powerful master of the Southern Domain narrows his attentive gaze upon noting something curious in the courtyard below him. In the blink of an eye, a violent blue beam of light descends from the skies, straight toward the ground with enormous speed. He lands triumphantly right before Chen Fan, leaving all the disciples around completely terrified. The swordsman praises the young senior's great talent and invites him to join the legendary One Sword sect in the south. Chen Fan is suspended by a gentle current of wind while his companions watch the scene. Completely stunned, the disciples die of envy while the former leader, Yahello, rejoices to see his best student guaranteeing a good future. But to everyone's surprise, the lad refuses the proposal, shouting that he swears eternal loyalty only to his beloved Kaoshan sect. Manhwa, Shuqing, and the former leader widen their eyes in pure shock, unable to conceive such madness from his friend. The swordsman changes his demeanor to a serious look and asks if he really understands the grandiosity of his clan. Chen Fan trembles in a cold sweat but remains firm, repeating obstinately his oath of absolute fidelity. He reports knowing very well that the elder before him is the protective grand elder of the largest sect in the entire Southern Domain. The master points out that he knows exactly the immense opportunity and the bright future he is throwing away with that refusal. But Zhou Yanyan smiles softly, praising his noble righteousness and warning he will make him his own personal disciple. The master grabs the lad by the collar of his tunic and warns his rivals that his duty is fulfilled, and he is leaving there now. The purple woman decides to imitate her colleague and points to Senior Shuqing, decreeing she will take her own sect. The beautiful Senior Shuqing is suddenly raised through the skies, enveloped by a strong current of wind under the audience's gaze. She and Manhwa exchange looks of pure astonishment and anguish upon realizing they are about to be separated forever. The young senior flies rapidly to the rival clan's floating platform, disappearing among the mist under the clear sky. While Manhwa suffers for his friend, his chubby partner bites a knife, planning to return home and buy land. Li Fuga dreams awake, imagining he will become the richest man in the country by buying all the properties in the region. Suddenly, the strong warrior Zhao Shanling appears before the chubby one, staring at his mystical teeth with immense surprise. He grabs the frightened chubby one by the collar, revealing that his mystical dentition is perfect for inheriting a secret art. Manhwa shouts, desperate, for his friend's name upon seeing him being taken by the rival sect leader, who just ignores him. The general of the Golden Cold sect narrows his dangerous gaze in Manhwa's direction and notes something very bizarre about his body. Manhwa trembles with pure terror upon realizing that his most precious spiritual secret is very close to being discovered. While his training companions are taken away, the young hero sees himself completely defenseless before the general. The villain conjures an immense red claw of pure spiritual energy to capture Manhwa and take him along with the group. Suddenly, a violent eruption of blood explodes from the ground, protecting the lad under the patriarch's fierce and protective roar. An enormous and frightening torrent of red energy snakes through the air, leaving all the legendary leaders frightened. The ancient monsters of the invading sects retreat immediately in panic before the terrible force of the great patriarch. A sleep-inducing mist spreads through the courtyard, making the defenseless disciples collapse on the floor in a deep sleep. The invaders tremble in a cold sweat, without understanding what type of legendary deity could be behind that power. Colossal silhouette of red mist of the patriarch materializes over the skies, revealing he is still very much alive. Underground, the patriarch realizes in desperation that if everyone goes away, the mountain will be left empty, and he will die trapped there. He knows that Manhwa is his only and valuable remaining trump card of salvation, and swears no one will dare touch the lad. The immense and frightening eye of the colossal entity of blood focuses directly on the horde of invading cultivators. The eye opens, revealing a blinding mystical glow, ready to discharge its terrible fury against the enemies. Immediately, the enemy leaders begin to cough up a lot of blood, feeling their internal organs being crushed from afar. Even the most powerful warriors of the great sects of the south are severely injured by the mere look of the patriarch. Yahello trembles with remorse upon realizing he formally dissolved the sect right before the eyes of its legendary creator. The colossal silhouette of blood roars, furious, accusing the invaders of trying to exterminate his only and precious seed. The swordsman tries to threaten him with his sect's name, swearing his clan will come to destroy him if he dares kill him there. The purple woman begs for mercy upon remembering that her ancestor was an old and respectable intimate friend of the patriarch. Zhao Shanling swallows his immense pride and bows, terrified, begging for the deity to forgive his grave error. The patriarch orders them to flee from there and warns with disdain that they can take the other 3 useless students away. 3 red beams shoot through the skies, carrying the floating platforms and the frightened leaders far away. The former invaders flee desperate, waving in the air and begging for the terrible master to calm his great fury. The elder reveals in thought that he only spared their lives so they would carry an important warning of danger to their clans. While the enemies vanish, a powerful and mysterious spear of red energy begins to condense in the temple courtyard. He delivers the artifact to Manhwa, warning that he can use that divine weapon to obliterate anyone who dares threaten him. The last invading elders who remained on the mountain also flee in a rush, dying of fear of the patriarch's wrath. Suddenly, all the sleeping disciples begin to float in the air, carried by a gentle and mysterious mystical energy. A colossal gale emerges, sweeping and expelling all the students out of the sacred territory in an instant. Silence finally returns to the courtyard, and the youth finds himself completely alone, holding his new and powerful red weapon. He looks around, assimilating the new reality, and realizes with melancholy that his beloved sect was really dissolved. Without any companion nearby, the lad remains motionless, reflecting on his uncertain future from now on. In the distance, the great Kashan sect entrance portal begins to tremble while the stone gates close with a boom. The former leader bows, asking for forgiveness for his failure, and decides to leave along with the Grand Elder toward his own destiny. The 2 veteran masters fly smoothly among the distant valleys, leaving behind the mountain they once governed. Great spirals of red energy begin to circle the entire temple, covering the area with a strong blood shield. Before the patriarch's imposing appearance, Manhwa bows respectfully, reciting beautiful praises to flatter him. The elder gives a light flick on his forehead, laughing, and warns that his cheap flatteries will not work with him at all. He reveals that that appearance is just a breath of his consciousness, and that his true body will sleep for a year. Before vanishing, the old man orders the lad to use any trick to attract strong warriors to his pit within a year. He promises to reward him grandiosely if he fulfills the mission and inserts the portal key directly into the young warrior's mind. The elder warns that he cannot die under the risk of sealing his tome forever, and Manhwa grumbles, detesting the burden. Alone in the silent courtyard, the lad looks to the sides, assimilating that now he is the only remaining member of the entire clan. With a resigned sigh, he accepts the loneliness and realizes that really no one else was left in that immense sanctuary. He consoles himself, thinking that the departure of Chen Fan and his chubby friend for the great sex of the South is a great blessing. The youth lies back on the cold stone floor, hoping mentally that everything goes well on Senior Shu's new path. He stares at the floating clouds, wondering in which year or month of the future he will have the chance to meet his good friends again. After resting his mind for a few minutes, the boy decides that the time has also come for him to go down the Forbidden Mountain. Using his new control of spiritual energy, he slides gracefully through the skies, descending among the treetops. The youth reflects proudly that he climbed the mountain as a mere mortal, and now descends it flying on top of a magic sword. He calculates that 3 years have passed since he left his village, and decides to cross the northern sea to visit his old home. The next day, he reaches the seashore and realizes he will need to rent a boat to continue his long journey back. An elderly boatman spots him from the shore, and the youth asks humbly for help to make the safe crossing of those waters. Accommodated in the boat, he talks amicably with the boatman's granddaughter, revealing that his homeland is on Mount Daking. The boatman comments, smiling, that the village of Yunji is a sacred land blessed with great miracles and prodigies. The youth confesses he had never heard of that legend, while he savors an excellent gulp of local wine. The old man says he has been sailing those waters for 20 years, and that the sea possesses its own living consciousness. Intrigued by the doe's poetic tone, the boy asks why that lake is commonly known as the North Sea. The elder explains wisely that the limits of a lake or a sea resides solely in the own belief of the one who sees it. Manhwa drinks his wine in silence, reflecting deeply on the old man's beautiful and grandiose philosophy lesson. The small vessel finally touches the beach sand gently, completing the peaceful crossing back. The hero waves happily at the boatman and his granddaughter, who say goodbye to him while the boat moves away through the waters. He turns in silence with his gaze fixed on the horizon, aware that the old man's words changed something inside himself. While they walk, a colossal and divine wave of golden energy explodes in the water, brightening the entire secret palace. Internally, the force of the scripture carves its power into Manhwa's mind in an explosion of spiritual energy. The sect leader awaits, anxious to see if the divine inheritance will finally manifest through his disciples. Manhwa celebrates, knowing he now possesses the perfect mystical technique to reach the legendary top of his cultivation. Thoughtful, the boy decides to keep his triumph a secret to avoid them discovering his magic mirror. The mystical phenomenon is so grandiose that it makes the calm waters of the North Sea churn into violent waves of power. Surrounded by shining rings of pure strength, the lad reaches the legendary state of total enlightenment at the beach's edge. His absolute success is linked to the ancient dragon core that resides in his body, catalyzing all that energy. 3 days pass in a complete trance until the youth finally opens his eyes, which shine with pure power. He sees himself surrounded by an immense sea of liquid gold, representing the fantastic expansion of his own spiritual sea. The divine flash dissipates, and tranquility returns to the beach, revealing the lad totally calm and in full peace. He stands up slowly and stretches, feeling a spiritual lightness and a physical vigor never before experienced. The youth celebrates happily upon verifying that his meditation made him break through directly to the top of the 7th power level. He recalls ancient texts about the continent, understanding that grandiose revelation is part of the mystical destiny. Grateful for the enlightenment, Manhwa makes a solemn bow to the sea, promising one day to return to help it grow. Young Manhwa walks with a calm expression through the busy streets of his old hometown. He passes in front of a large mansion and smiles, remembering that he once dreamed of marrying the owner's daughter. The young man leaves his naive childhood daydreams behind and decides to visit his old house. Arriving at a familiar, simple courtyard, he pushes the old wooden doors to enter the property. An elderly man runs over, surprised to recognize him, and calls his wife to let her know the missing boy has returned. The sweet lady welcomes him with great affection, noting that he has grown quite a bit, but is still very thin. The old man explains that the harvests were poor and that they moved into Manhwa's empty empty house. Understanding, the young master offers a heavy bag of silver to buy the old house back. The kind couple refuses the money with a smile, saying they consider him like a true son. After a good meal, the young man says his goodbyes and leaves the silver hidden there before departing in silence. He walks along, thoughtful, reflecting that the emotional ties of the mortal world are difficult to sever. The next morning, he stops in front of a carving shop upon noticing a very familiar sculpture. The old artisan is startled to recognize him, and the young man greets him with a beautiful smile. The gentleman asks desperately about his son, and Manhwa lies, saying that he is doing very well. The elderly man calms down, feeling relieved to think that his rebellious son went to learn a new trade far away. Touched, the old man cries with joy, thanking the young hero immensely for bringing good news. Manhwa hides his sadness, remembering that his friend suffered a fatal accident in the sect's mountains. With a heavy heart, he says goodbye to the artisan, wishing the kind gentleman good health. The cultivator decides to skip a visit to another old colleague and heads straight to his chubby friend's house. He remembers that Li Fugai was recruited by a great master and imagines that he must be having a great time. At the Li family mansion, an arrogant young man from the Zhao family threatens the residents with a cruel gaze. The intruder demands that the family's daughter-in-law accompany him that night in exchange for his brother's mercy. The poor girl cries frightened, while Mr. Lister's filled with pure fury at such cowardice. Mr. Lai shouts at his guards to throw the villain out, swearing he would never accept such humiliation. Young Zhao turns his back and promises to return with a terrifying display of mystical power. Trying to maintain order, the patriarch instructs his men to take the young daughter-in-law to a safe place. Soon after, old Mr. Lai is left completely alone in the middle of the large, silent courtyard. He sighs heavily, lamenting his son's absence and wondering when he will return home. Suddenly, Manhwa appears, emanating a strong sacred light, and introduces himself as his son's colleague. The elderly man widens his eyes in complete shock upon hearing the name of one of the formerly missing boys. The cultivator guarantees that his friend will return soon, leaving the worried father extremely relieved. Manhwa promises to resolve the problem with the rivals and asks Mr. Li to forge 3 different spears. Meanwhile, at the enemy mansion, the young aggressor reports his frustration to a powerful cultivator. The deceitful boy points to his own face, pretending that the Li family struck him with a hard slap. The cultivator, Zhao Hai, accuses the boy of being a total idiot for having hit his own face. The master warns that he will pay a visit to the rivals in 7 days, and the coward trembles with fear at the reprimand. 1 week later, the 3 spears ordered by Manhwa rest ready on the courtyard floor. Manhwa analyzes the weapons, compares them with the fearsome blood spear of his former sect ancestor. Without wasting time, the hero channels his green mystical energy to enchant the 3 spears on the ground. The family servants fall to their knees, awestruck to realize they are in the presence of an immortal being. Mr. Li widens his eyes, deducing hopefully that his own son has also become a deity. Manhwa senses the approach of intruders and warns that he will explain everything after solving the problem. The Zhao clan invades the courtyard violently, led by the showy, cowardly youth and his master. But the great master Zhao Hai freezes in absolute shock upon seeing Manhwa standing next to Patriarch Li. The once arrogant warrior starts sweating cold, totally terrified by the presence of his former rival. The showy youth tries to threaten the residents using his brother's name, but Zhao Hai orders him to shut up. Desperate not to irritate Manhwa, the warrior delivers a violent and powerful slap to his ally's face. The heavy impact sends the insolent youth through the air, causing him to collide violently with the ground. As Zhao Hai kneels trembling and makes a deep bow, begging for his senior's forgiveness, Manhwa stares at him coldly, reminding him that he should know his ruthless temperament very well. Zhao Hai keeps sweating cold and calls Manhwa brother, while the hero creates a bright flame at his fingertip. Without hesitation, the cultivator launches the powerful fireball at the arrogant youth, who starts to burn and screams in pain. The boy screams desperately in pure agony, while Zhao Hai begs on his knees for the hero to spare the boy's life. With a beam of light, Manhwa points his finger and decrees that the enemy will live the rest of his days merely as a mortal. The mystical strike completely destroys the young coward's cultivation, causing him to spit out a large amount of blood. The hero orders the master to take the ruined youth away, and Zhaohai thanks him. Relieved to have his own life spared, the Li family patriarch observes the entire scene, completely stunned by the cultivator's terrifying display of power. Meng Hao apologizes for the mess caused by his lackey, and Mr. Li makes a deep bow, thanking the immortal. The young man says he helped because of his great friend Lafugui and politely announces that the matter is resolved and that he is leaving. The family waves with enormous respect and gratitude, wishing him a safe journey as the hero walks out of the courtyard. The man cries with joy, proud of his son, while the young man continues his journey, reflecting on his next step. He arrives in front of a dark cave, remembering the day he and his friends entered, planting their own destiny. The young man reflects that he has reached the same level his senior had in the past and feels that these 3 years were a cycle. Curious if that return marked a new beginning, the boy hops onto his flying sword and prepares to explore the world. He scratches his head, laughing at himself, realizing that before he had no money, and now he is still without any spirit stones. Upon landing on an isolated mountain, the young man is surprised by a mysterious figure who was already waiting for his return. Meng Hao raises his gaze and stares at his old enemy with great tension, demanding to know what he is doing in that place. Old Shangwen Shu smiles menacingly, saying that he calculated the boy's return and asks how he will escape his hands. Knowing the immense danger, the hero does not hesitate for a single second and jumps off the cliff on his sword to escape at full speed. The old master jumps right after him, breaking the ground with force and laughing insanely while pursuing his prey. Coveting Meng Hao's secret treasure, the elder fires green beams of energy, wanting to use it to ascend in level. In the air, the young man defends himself nimbly, invoking 3 flying swords to block the fast and terrible magical attack. The violent clash between the silver blades and the elemental blast causes a huge explosion of light in the forest skies. The veteran widens his eyes, impressed to note that his target has evolved once again and now has an advanced level. Dominated by greed, the villain swears he will eliminate the boy in 2 days to steal the item and ensure his ascent. Meng Hao accelerates his flight, knowing that the power gap is immense and that fighting a 9th level master would be fatal. An intense and long mystical pursuit begins, tearing through the skies between large valleys and rocky cliffs. Far from that tense hunt, a glacial peak entirely covered in snow stands majestically in the middle of the large mountain range. Several warriors from the famous Violet Fate sect wait in silence before the frozen vastness full of mysteries. A veteran leader named Wu Dinkyu rests, playing a calm game of board with the exotic and eccentric Old Song. Old Song strokes his beard with an astute smile, praising the excellent quality of the enemy sect's young warriors. Master Wu responds by extending his hand to bet a rare and valuable celestial crystal that is incredibly bright. Confident in his victory, the exotic old man accepts the challenge, betting a rare and coveted piece of a shattered star. The eccentric points to a distant flag, stating that he will win the bet if the disciples cannot get it there. The Violet sect leader smiles confidently, guaranteeing that his students will not only get the flag, but will also steal everything. Song lets out a long laugh, declaring that he has opened his sacred mountain for 7 days for any youth to try their luck. With a sharp gaze, he warns coldly that if the youths turn into food for the mystical beasts, no one will be able to blame him later. The 2 masters start arguing fiercely, debating about the terrible mortal beasts that roam free through the forest. The disciples sweat cold, feeling like mere toys of bets while being reprimanded to maintain total silence. The great leader speaks to the students, promising that whoever brings the flag will immediately become his personal disciple. Completely motivated and thirsty for glory, the warriors shout in unison and run desperately toward the great challenge. Master Wu proudly displays the strength of his clan while Song smiles with malice, remembering the fearsome forest on the way. At the base of the peak, the brave warriors come face to face with gigantic and cruel snow wolves that roar in a frightening way. The young disciples enter into pure despair and run for their lives, fleeing from the monstrous white beasts in the snow. Observing everything from above, the eccentric old man mocks the embarrassment and says that the boys won't even be able to pass the entrance. At the same time, Meng Hao flies over the forest surroundings and has the idea of trying to lure the beasts away to hide there. An ancient map reveals that huge restricted area is protected by mystical laws, preventing external magical searches. Trapped at the base of the mountain, the frustrated Violet Sect warriors try to advance stealthily through the dense, cold snow. Master Wu is not shaken and says that the frightened students were the weakest and that the true elite is already climbing after a long and tense hour of walking. Another group of disciples finally spots the glorious mountain of treasures. The sect students run desperately while a huge and ferocious gray wolf chases them through the snow. Old Song mocks the rival disciples, stating that only failures would flee in that manner. Laughing loudly, the eccentric guarantees that anyone can try to get the treasures hidden at the top. Master Wu takes a step forward, visibly irritated by the enormous arrogance of his old rival. But Song displays a frightening and bright gaze, reminding everyone that no one can leave before the end of the game. The great leader of the Violet Sect swallows hard and stares at the exotic adversary in complete silence. Meanwhile, Meng Hao lands cautiously in the frozen area, trying to throw off his pursuer. Old Shangwen Shu gives a cruel smile upon noticing that his hunt has entered a total dead end. The villain advances furiously, swearing to eliminate the boy before his cultivation becomes a major threat. The hero spots the mountain overtaken by a heavy demonic aura and perceives it as his only chance for escape. Far from there, the eccentric old man continues boasting about the powerful mystical beasts he creates in the place. Confident, Master Wu points out that one of his best warriors will tame the fearsome giant white monkey. The brave disciple shouts at the top of his lungs, releasing a strong aura to try to subdue the monster. But the monstrous white beast roars with immense fury, resisting the young warrior's attack easily. The Violet Sect leader is left completely speechless while Old Song lets out a loud laugh. Suddenly, the eccentric old man widens his eyes upon noticing that an intruder has invaded his territory. On the mountain, Meng Hao dodges the big white monkey nimbly while his pursuer approaches. Out of options, the hero draws a heavy magical spear, preparing a powerful strike against the giant beast. The beast suffers a violent and bizarre impact that causes a true explosion in its own body. The boy uses his mystical mirror, which has the strange power of wounding the beasts in embarrassing spots. Old Song sweats cold, totally incredulous to see his proud monkey defeated in that way. The rival leader opens a wide smile, finding the mysterious outsider incredibly interesting. Further ahead, the Violet Sect students fight with immense difficulty against a terrible armored bear. But Meng Hao crosses the battlefield like a bolt of lightning and launches the giant bear far away with his weapon. The students stare at the scene, completely shocked by the overwhelming power of that mysterious spear in the sky. The villain Shangwan realizes that the boy's power comes from an absurd and coveted magical treasure. Master Wu mocks the other's misfortune, asking if Old Song prefers to return to the chess game. Furious, the creator of the beasts stares at the spear and guarantees that the brat will not survive the deep forest. A colossal armored mammoth appears, blocking the path, and Song states that the ferocious beast is invincible. However, Meng Hao delivers a ruthless attack, tearing the skin of the terrible monster and causing a lot of blood to pour out. The hero flees quickly toward the summit, hoping that his hunter will be devoured on the way. During the intense race through the snow, the youth suddenly notices a small bottle fallen between the rocks. With an agile and swift movement, he slides across the icy ground, picking up the valuable object without wasting time. The elderly rival laughs, saying the outsider got lucky, while Song warns that he will suffer an ambush. But the fearsome mystical snake also suffers the bizarre explosive hit to its rear, frustrating Old Song. A gigantic eagle attacks from the skies, but ends up suffering the same humiliating and painful fate as the others. Seeing that the elderly man is about to snap and intervene, the rival leader holds his shoulder firmly, Master Wu reminds him that anyone could take the treasures and demands that he keep his word. High atop the frozen summit, the mythical red flag waves violently under the strong wind. Meng Hao finally reaches the top, exhausted and relieved to note that his old pursuer has given up. The boy finds a valuable storage bag, glowing intensely at the base of the mythical flag. He takes the grand prize, thanking his luck mentally, but accidentally knocks down the old flag. Feeling that he caused a very serious problem, the boy jumps off the large cliff to flee immediately. At the base of the mountain, old Shangguan Shu walks furiously through the fallen bodies of several beasts. The bitter villain stares at the summit in total silence, planning a new way to capture his target. The youths from the Violet sect complain, outraged, swearing that the intruder must carry a legendary treasure. Master Wu continues holding the eccentric old man firmly, who boils with pure rage, wanting to attack. Smiling ironically, the leader calls the enraged rival to finish the long and tense chess game. The master concludes that the game ended in a major draw, since the flag fell without being captured. He summons the students and decrees that the one who steals Meng Hao's spear will enter the inner sect. Master Wu Dingqiu reprimands the idea of stealing, warning his students that they can only negotiate or take the spear peacefully. The ambitious sect disciples bow in unison, agreeing promptly with the clear orders of their great leader. 7 days later, a majestic and imposing stone wall appears on the horizon, protected by a shimmering magical barrier. Mengha observes the light, deducing that mysterious city serves only to house and welcome true cultivators. Hours earlier, the youth had hidden in a cave to count the enormous fortune and magical weapons he obtained. Unable to recognize the colorful pills, the hero concludes that he will need specialized help to use them safely. The boy unrolls a mystical scroll, realizing from the drawings and sounds of beasts that it is a domination weapon. Soon after, he holds the exotic black net, deducing that it serves to bind opponents with strong spiritual energy. But what really leaves him completely shocked and breathless is the beautiful storage bag conquered at the summit. The young master widens his eyes, impressed to note that the relic's internal space is vast as a true world. Dominated by euphoria, the boy celebrates his incredible luck, knowing that he has just obtained a supreme magical treasure. However, he sweats cold upon realizing that he stole the reward of a great sect, and that he now faces overwhelming danger. Back in the present, the cautious boy walks toward the city gates to try to identify his pills. Arriving at the entrance, he is suddenly intercepted by a flying guard demanding payment of spirit stones. Pretending to be a humble member of a small sect, the boy makes a long bow, asking for patience and guidance. The soldier explains the city's strict rules, warning that fighting is strictly prohibited, and collects the entry fee. Already walking through the beautiful and busy streets, the youth laments the expense, thinking he would never spend his stone unnecessarily. He spots dozens of pharmacies around the place, deducing brilliantly that is enough to compare his pills with those in the stores. The youth visits several shops patiently and drinks tea with experienced local sellers to observe the rare merchandise. 3 days later, the hero discovers, amazed, that he possesses 8 rare foundation, building pills that are worth a large and beautiful fortune. Intrigued and thirsty for more answers, the youth becomes curious upon encountering rare jewels he hasn't recognized yet. Walking through the square, he stops, amazed before a gigantic and luxurious pavilion built with noble woods. Confident that he will find the necessary information there, the brave warrior crosses the portals of that great shop. He is promptly received by a beautiful and seductive attendant who displays a charming smile, offering her valuable help. The humble youth asks if the shop possesses his ancient scrolls for pill identification, and the lady guides him through the place. The salesperson shows a very expensive item with no details, making the youth demand something with better quality immediately. She then presents an ancient relic capable of revealing potions from the entire vast domain, but warns that the piece is quite fragile. The astute cultivator analyzes the small piece calmly, knowing secretly that his powerful mirror can duplicate it. Sensing his interest, the beautiful lady approaches in a provocative way, promising a discount in exchange for favors. Totally inexperienced with women, the poor hero turns extremely red and retreats, stuttering a lot out of pure nervousness. Finding his innocence very cute, the charming salesperson smiles sweetly and asks the youth to call her older sister. After closing the valuable deal, young Qiaoling delivers the item, demanding in a sweet way that he return to see her in the future. With the coveted object finally in hand, the young and shy warrior hurries to leave that large and busy shop. Upon analyzing the new relic, he discovers the great mysteries of his potions and celebrates his excellent investment. At the shop, the old manager approaches, questioning the lady, and she confirms, smiling, that the youth was a quite naive outsider. While walking distracted through the streets of the busy city, the boy ends up crossing paths with a huge band of cultivators. To the total surprise of both, the hero locks eyes with Zhou Kai, and the old acquaintances recognize each other immediately. The imposing and arrogant leader of the group questions who that outsider would be, and Zhou Kai recounts the old friend's past. The students whisper, amazed, remembering that the hero carries a priceless divine weapon coveted by legendary sects. In a quick and threatening movement, the enemy band surrounds the boy, and he demands coldly to know the reason for that provocation. With a gaze filled with pure greed, the band leader opens a fan and warns that they just want to admire his treasure. Faced with the cowardly threat, the young and ruthless hero maintains total silence, casting a death stare at the adversaries. The ambitious cultivator continues to display a huge, mocking smile, completely certain that he will intimidate the isolated youth. The sect henchmen laugh in pure mockery, demanding that the solitary cultivator show the much-talked about celestial weapon already. Without hesitating for a single second, the brave youth channels his mystical energy and invokes his heavy ancient spear. Wielding the gigantic battle relic, the hero warns in a cutting tone that he will kill anyone who approaches. The rivals stare at the fearsome spear from afar and are confused to note that the item looks like just a piece of common metal. Knowing the great danger, the youth plans his escape from the city, deeply lamenting that he will sleep another night out in the open. Suddenly, the tense climate in the place is broken by the heavy sound of several boots. Marching quickly toward the conflict, a new and powerful group of veteran warriors appears on the horizon, displaying somber expressions and a strong murderous aura. Meng Hao realizes, frightened, that the new group belongs to the Snow Mountain sect and that they have blocked the exit. The arrogant leader tries to flatter the newcomers with a bow, hoping to obtain some great benefit, but the imposing members of the Violet Fate sect ignore the man completely and pass right by him. The two warriors stop before the hero and introduce themselves extremely respectfully as Chuan and Lu. The crowd is in shock to see that the solitary boy manages to gain the respect of one of the largest sects in the domain. The two ask if the weapon in the hero's hands is the same supreme spear used at the treasure mountain. With a very calm gaze, the youth confirms quietly that he indeed held that weapon that day. The beautiful attendant observes everything from the balcony and finds the serene and unshackable stance of the young outsider very interesting. Qian says he doesn't care about the stolen treasures but states that he really wants to negotiate the valuable spear. The two rivals beg desperately for Meng Hao to sell his divine weapon for a very fair price. The youth is sincere and warns that that is a mere piece of iron, but the warriors insist that they recognize the item, swears they will buy the weapon no matter what, and makes a slight threat with his legendary clan's fearsome name. The hero thinks it is not a scam if he already told the truth and finally accepts, hearing the cultivator's offers. Lu offers 500 spirit stones, but Qian accuses him of offending the hero and tops the offer with 1,500. Meng Hao observes the fight and soon deduces that their master promised a great reward to whoever brings the spear. Chuan elevates the dispute, offering his entire fortune of 2,100 spirit stones directly to the youth. With no more money, Lu draws a bottle and offers 3 precious celestial water pills from his own clan. Furious, Chuan counters, offering 7 rare spirit pills, and the two start arguing very violently. Totally blinded by the fury of competition, Lu raises his hand and invokes his best and most powerful magical treasure. He displays the fearsome soul-sucking nail, a dangerous artifact capable of freezing and wounding enemies gravely. Old Sun trembles with dread upon recognizing the extremely rare lethal weapon exclusive to the legendary Violet Fate sect. Not to be outdone, Qian also invokes his celestial river fan, a powerful magical treasure of flames. Menghao sweats cold, fearing he will end up on the big sect's blacklist, but realizes that now he cannot back down anymore. Lu adds a dangerous poison pill to his offer, and Chuan snaps, accusing his rival of trying to oppress him by force. Unable to decide on a winner, the two agree to buy the weapon together and let their master decide later. The hero accepts the incredible and irresistible offer, and the two warriors hold the spear with extreme and pure gratitude. The youth disguises his nervousness, observing the duo leave totally happy while carrying the simple piece of iron. On the balcony, the old manager smokes his pipe, commenting that the students from the great sect are getting worse. He calls the duo garbage for failing to notice the fakeness of a piece of iron, not even while touching it. The young woman covers her mouth, laughing a lot, finding that bizarre and humiliating situation completely hilarious. Flying on his new flame fan, Meng Hao decides to flee and isolate himself to reach the long-awaited mystical foundation soon. Far from there, Leader Wu reprimands old Song, saying that a true warrior needs to always remain calm. He mocks the eccentric's rage and offers to teach the meditation arts of his own glorious sect. At that moment, Qian and Lu arrive running, excited, and announce that they finally managed to obtain the supreme treasure. Master Wu smiles, awestruck by the students' success, and decides to promote them to the clan's great inner circle. The two disciples guarantee they didn't cause problems and deliver the great weapon together with much respect and pride. The leader extends his hand to attract the spear and invites the bitter old Song to appreciate the mystical relic with him. But upon holding the weapon, the experienced master freezes completely, widening his eyes and asking about the price paid. The students list proudly the mountain of jewels, treasures, and rare potions they happily delivered to Meng Hao. Hearing about his great rival's humiliation, the eccentric Song cries from laughing so much, letting out a scandalous laugh. Master Wu roars in supreme fury, calling his students garbage upon realizing that the expensive weapon is totally fake. The furious scream echoes through the mountains and reaches the city, becoming the great reason for laughter among the residents. Half a month later, Meng Hao ends his long escape and finds a perfect cave to isolate himself and train his strength. 2 months pass, and the youth finally exits his exile, revealing that he is now at the 8th level of power. But he laments that his gluttonous magical mirror devours hundreds of stones just to duplicate a valuable potion. The warrior calculates the absurd price to reach the next level, concluding that he will be left totally without resources. Without a clan to protect him, he swears that he will spare no effort to become strong enough to never be stepped on again. The youth remembers that he fought hard to survive and swears that his path will be walked with pure and eternal determination. Moved by his unshakable will, the warrior takes off quickly, destroying the old trees around the cave. Months later, he flies quietly under the beautiful blue sky and observes the distant lands approaching on the horizon. Meng Hao reflects that 3 years ago, he failed the exams and now returns to the capital as a cultivator. He hitches a ride on the carriage of a young scholar and comments that he just wants to visit Tang Tower. The friendly youth praises Meng Hao's noble aura, and he thanks him humbly for the good company on the trip. Curious, the hero asks his colleague what it really means to be a great Confucian scholar. Soon after, he surprises the young colleague with a deep and complex question about what life is. Looking out the window, he says that snow only exists in winter and that the cold wind is its true life. The cultivator explains that snow dies upon reaching the heat, even if it yearns for the warmth of summer. He holds a flake that melts in his hand, proving that that heat does not belong to the snow's life. The carriage finally crosses the great stone gates of the capital under an intense and beautiful snowfall. The hero says goodbye to his travel companion, thanking him for the ride while he walks through the snowy streets. Years later, the young scholar would become famous and would remember with affection the wise lesson from that night. Menghao stares at the immense Tang Tower, remembering that it was the place closest to his great dream. With slow and nostalgic steps, he walks to the majestic construction to fulfill his desire. He passes by an old painted mural, remembering the ancient stories his mother told in the past. With an agile jump, the youth lands silently on the frozen roof of the tallest tower in the city. Looking at the vastness of illuminated houses, he realizes that he is still very far from his destination. But now, as a cultivator, he knows he can fly there and finally search for his missing parents. The boy remembers with sadness the fateful day when a strange purple storm blew outside. He recalls his father wearing a long purple cloak while observing the winds through the window. The image of his father leaving reluctantly and his mother's silent crying still haunt his mind. Even with the rumors of death, he has the absolute certainty that both are still alive somewhere. The imposing tower rests under the winter sky, marking the end of the hero's old mortal ties. With his mind and heart totally relieved, he decides that it is already time to return to his journey. The warrior invokes his majestic magical fan and takes flight, tearing through the capital's night skies. But suddenly, he widens his eyes and freezes in cold sweat upon feeling a very strange presence. The youth lands on the nearest roof and turns his face, frightened, toward the tower he just left. He is completely perplexed upon spotting a mysterious and colossal beam of light descending onto the building. The boy realizes that mortals cannot see the light and questions why he hadn't noticed that before. Below the tower, several people kneel on the ground as if worshipping that bizarre energy. The blinding pillar of light pierces the clouds, tearing through the sky and creating a violent electrical whirlwind. A scary black vortex descends from the skies, connecting the clouds directly to the tower roof. Menghao enters into pure panic upon using his spiritual sense and noticing something terrible inside the hurricane. The immense vortex is completely full of bones and skeletons spinning in the middle of violent lightning. Thousands of mortal remains collide furiously in the storm, forming a scene straight out of a nightmare. Dominated by terror, the hero runs desperately across the roofs to flee that monstrous anomaly. He climbs quickly onto his flying sword and accelerates at full force far away from the great capital. While fleeing, he remembers sweating cold that he saw a giant coffin in the middle of that mountain of bones. And on top of the old coffin, there was an ancient skeleton with tattered clothes, sitting with its legs crossed. The corpse opened its eyes and revealed gray pupils with 7 bright points spinning like stars. That brief visual contact caused a lancinating pain in his mind, making his body wither on the spot. The boy deduces that that tower is an evil object and asks himself what dark deity lives there. After fleeing the city without looking back, he finally breathes a sigh of relief upon arriving at an isolated valley. But the terror returns upon seeing that his skin has aged and now emanates a very bizarre black smoke. He concludes, frightened, that the curse caught him just for having locked eyes with the evil creature. Looking like a true black smoke signal, the warrior decides to hide in a dark cave. Shortly after, he snaps with rage upon seeing that the mist passes through the rock and creates a dark pillar in the skies. Realizing that stopping condemns him to being found, he returns to running furiously to dissipate the smoke. During the night, the despair increases when the darkened mist starts to shine with a strong white tone. 7 exhausting days later, the poor warrior collapses on the ground, unable to take even one more step, but he smiles relieved upon seeing that his body healed and calculates that the smoke will disappear for good in a month. Menghao perceives footsteps approaching in size, tired, deciding that he will need to run again. 3 warriors from the cold wine sect appear, blocking the path with very threatening looks. The girl in the group holds a small cracked pearl that absorbs the dense energy of death's aura. The hero looks at his own smoke and wonders if that is the residue of a life being burned. Leader Yan Zigyo introduces himself and demands to know the reason for that strange dark mist on the outsider. Without any warning, the warrior launches a fast and cutting wind attack against the isolated youth. Menghao dodges quickly while the enemy invokes a gigantic gigantic purple skeletal hand of energy. The boy dodges the mortal attack and asks ironically if that is how they ask for things around there. Without hesitating, the hero launches his flying swords and orders with firmness that they explode on the spot. A colossal and violent fire explosion erupts before the three warriors, scaring the enemies. The trio retreats in shock upon realizing that the boy possesses a magical treasure and is at the 8th level. Yanziga sweats cold and asks if anyone has ever heard of such a strong master carrying a fan. The lady remembers a strong rumor about a certain Manhwa who negotiated a fan with another sect. The enemy leader smiles upon hearing the famous name and deduces that they just found the sought after target. Yan pulls a crude poster with the hero's face and confirms that their mission is to steal the supreme weapon. With a very evil smile, the warrior celebrates his enormous luck at having stumbled upon the grand prize. Running through the forest, Manhwa gets irritated with the cowards and decides that he will simply kill them all. The boy realizes that the smoke made him more aggressive, but feels no pity for eliminating those who attacked him. A sinister and gigantic black smoke skull forms in the skies, following the hero's path. Suddenly, a colossal explosion of red energy dominates the skies with a frightening rumble. Manhwa stops his escape and looks up, completely shocked to see the sky stained with blood. Far from there, the great elder masters of other sects feel the immense power echoing through the domain. The old leaders tremble with fear upon realizing that the sound wave moves at an absurd speed. A gigantic crack tears through the red sky, releasing a white light and very devastating lightning. The young hero freezes in pure dread upon noting that the sky itself is being totally shattered. He stares at the apocalyptic anomaly hovering over the distant mountains of that vast continent. The blinding flash of the cosmic crack illuminates the hero's entire silhouette in the middle of the darkness. Suddenly, a long beam of scarlet light shoots from the rift, falling toward the distant lands. A violent divine explosion shocks the horizon while Manhwa watches, everything in total silence. He laments his own luck in the middle of the chaos when suddenly a corpse falls right next to him. Without time to think, a large and bright magical restriction circle lights up right on the ground. The hero lowers his gaze, realizing he stepped right into the middle of a powerful sealing trap. The chains of mystical light climb up his legs, immobilizing his movements quickly. The trio of enemy warriors appears around the bright circle, cornering the young cultivator. The girl in the group warns, worried that the pearl cracked for good and can no longer hide their aura. Yan smiles with immense arrogance and says that there is no problem, since they finally captured their prey. Manhwa turns his face, furious, upon noticing that he was tracked and that the cowards called for reinforcements. The hero holds his magical weapon while a fourth cultivator, much stronger, descends from the skies. The imposing warrior Lu Dian floats on his sword, displaying the 9th level of condensation. The boy sweats cold, knowing that the rival is one step away from the foundation and that he won't be able to defeat him. Yan demands that the hero hand over the supreme weapon, promising to leave his corpse intact if he obeys. But before the villain attacks, two fearsome white wolves appear, roaring furiously right behind him. The enemy leader despairs and tries to invoke his magic without understanding where the beasts came from. In the blink of an eye, Yan suffers a lethal and bloody blow, widening his eyes in complete shock.